It is 6 o'clock, and we will call the Kerrville City Council meeting to order on, what is today? It is July 25th at 6 o'clock. And I have asked, and I need to make sure I say this correctly, I have asked Pastor Monica O'Donnell. She is the newly commissioned associate pastor of First United Methodist Church. And she is going to do our pledge for us and our prayer.
Yes.
So thank you for being here, Monica.
welcome.
And if you'll stand, please.
Almighty God, thank you so much for this city. Thank you for our leadership. Thank you for putting people in this room that are passionate and care about the things that go on in this town. We just pray that you will help us to be brothers and sisters and love one another and just listen with as much passion as we have for the things that we like to talk about. We just thank you, and we just pray that you're present with us during this meeting. And we ask all these things in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
And now for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Monica, and we're glad to have you in your new position. All right, Stuart, announcements.
All right, thank you, Maren. Welcome to everyone tonight. Glad to have everyone here. If I can get my, there they are. If I can get them up on the screen. There we go. We've got several announcements tonight. Obviously, at the library, we've got quite a few events over the next 2 weeks before we meet again, so I'm not going to go through all of them. But I will highlight one that's this Saturday. We're going to have Kevin Hartley. He's with the Sierra Club, and he'll be at the library Saturday at 2 p.m. He'll be showing photographs and maps of his favorite hikes and drives at the Grand Canyon South Rim. So we've got a picture of that. I don't know how many people in here have been there, but it is beautiful. And so if you want to find out more about it, please come to the library Saturday at 2 o'clock. Okay, you may have seen some golfers today in town. The 77th Annual Heart of the Hills Golf Tournament began today. It's going to run 4 days through Saturday. 18-hole, par 70 at the Scott Shriner Municipal Golf Course. There are 102 teams. We sold out, right? So that is 204 golfers that are loose in Kerrville. So make them, if you see them around town, make them feel special. That's a lot of tax dollars that are coming in for all of our eating places. So we're happy to have them.
And they bring families also.
And they do, yes, they do. Okay, this is Shark Week, I guess nationally. It's also Shark Week at the pool. If you have someone who has some artistic skill, or even if they don't, I'm sure, you can draw your favorite shark or fish, and bring it to the Olympic pool, receive a free admission during Open Swim this Friday, July 28th. That's one entry per drawing, and the drawings will be showcased in the lobby area. So get the kids to work, draw some stuff, and bring it out there. We're happy to see them. Upcoming parks events, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, August 5th. They'll have the end of summer shindig, and that's going to be at Kerrville Shriner Park, 3 to 6 p.m. You can go out there and have a party. Free boat rentals, Barking Dog Ice will be there, and the Moochie machine. Did I say that right? Moochie? Okay. It's a free event. We encourage everybody to come out. I believe that's one of the final events before, when does school start back? The 14th? Okay. But good way to go out. Let's get people out to Kerrville Shriner Park. And we want to say congratulations. It seems like we do this every year because we've got such a great staff out there. City of Kerrville's competitive lifeguard team is going to state again. Amazing group of employees from the Aquatics Division, Parks and Recreation Department. They qualified at, I said yesterday's, but that's last week's Central Texas Lifeguard Competition. And so they'll be heading on to state, and they'll be in Plano on July 31st, which is next Monday. They've been working diligently since the beginning of the summer, and we're very happy for them. And I don't know, Ashley, do you want to say anything about that? Or?
She's the coach.
Rosa, you want to say anything?
An eager group of kids who I think represent the city well, and we're really excited to go to state. So yeah.
How many years in a row have we done that now?
how many years in a row have we gone to state? Oof, I mean, with COVID, yeah, I think there's been 8 or 9 years. They didn't do it during 2020, but yeah, it's a great accomplishment.
Yeah, pretty impressive. All right, and we have one last announcement from today, at least from this end of the podium. I'm going to turn it over to y'all, but I'm going to let Chief come up and talk about it.
I didn't take long.
So excited to announce our new off-road response vehicle. So this was a 6x6 back in November. We actually, prior to that, we've identified a need with the Kerrville Fire Department, partnered with the Community Foundation in November, and they gave us a matching grant of $30,000 if we could raise $30,000 from the community. 59 donors from the community came up in 3 months. We were able to raise the money and got the matching grant. So this is a response vehicle that we will have for the fire department, for a wildland response team. For here, we'll use it for our technical response team also, and wide area searches, a lot of applications that we'll use with the fire department. So this was a picture from today, and so you notice that is a 6x6 there, and in the back there is a fire skid. It's a 70-gallon fire pump with 5 gallons of foam that we can respond to wildfires anywhere in the city limits, within the county, and then obviously within our region or within the state to be able to provide support. So we're excited about that. So.
No, we were, it's exciting, and we just need to make sure it will never find itself on a deer lease, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So, no, that
Thank
is
y'all.
exciting, and we thank the Community Foundation again for their support.
Absolutely. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Stuart, that's everything? Okay. Council, does anybody have anything they would like to mention?
No, not.
Okay, I do, so give me a minute here. I'd just like again to say congratulations to HEB. They were picked the #1 grocery store in the United States, not just ours. This is HEB as a whole, but I think that is just wonderful, and of course, we can boast that they started right here. I want to thank everybody that was part of the river cleanup. Lots and lots of people worked on that Saturday, and it was hot, and I just appreciate everybody that participated in that. Wanted to mention that yesterday we had Girl Scout Troop number 672. They came to earn a democracy government badge. And we had about 18 of them here. They have about 35 in their entire group. And one of the adults that was with them yesterday was a father, and he is one of our local firefighters. So it was fun to have them, and Stuart did a great job. They came in and they sat and we talked, and then he had them role play, and he put them up here where council is and back where staff is, and where the attorney and city secretary and assistants over here. And then we went to each department, and they had a great time, and I think they learned a lot. And also a thank you to them. A lot of them were part of the river cleanup on Saturday. Another thing I'd like to mention, the mega food drive that is held at Mount Wesley. That's the last Monday of every month. In June, they fed 350 families. That equated to about 1,000 people. And the next mega food drive will be this next Monday. And the city participates in that. K-Pub always has a group along with all of our churches and so many of our local nonprofits. So great thing that happens in our community. They partner with, of course, as everyone knows, the San Antonio Food Bank. And it is just a great thing for our community. So just want to say thank you to all of them for all of those good things. All right, we have a presentation to make. Do we have a Rebecca Sparkman in the house? Will you come up, please? And do we have someone from Parks and Rec? You guys want to come up also? So we are happy to present to you and recognize you, Rebecca Sparkman, with the July 25th, 2023 Kerrville Kindness Award. Rebecca Sparkman, a summer lifeguard at the City of Kerrville's Olympic Pool, was attending a private swim event at a local home when a young swimmer began experiencing trouble in the deep end of the pool. Rebecca immediately jumped into the pool and guided the girl to safety. Rebecca, and this is what her mother said then, Rebecca came from the patio and jumped in to save her, the girl's mother said. Her quick action was greatly appreciated and kept my daughter safe. The Kerrville Kindness Program offers a sincere thank you to Rebecca for her quick and heroic response during this life-threatening situation. And we all say thank you to you, and we appreciate what you have done so much. Would you like to say something to everybody?
I mean, thank you, Rosa, for treating me. And thank you for this award. Really.
How long have you been a lifeguard?
Just the start of summer.
Okay, first
summer.
year. Fantastic. And was there anything other than making some money that drove you to becoming a lifeguard for the
Yes,
summer?
I really want to help people. I really want to make a difference for people. I really like this job. It's a job that is not just for the money, it's also for saving people, and it's very beneficial, I think. So,
That's great.
thank you.
Would you guys, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think that, really proud of Rebecca. All of my staff work really diligently to hone in on their skills and make sure that they're rescue ready at all times. So it's great that they're able to take what they learn here in their summer job and take those life-saving skills and implement them in real life. And I think that they're really good skills to have. So, yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
And what will be in store for you this fall?
So, I'll be doing my senior year at Comfort High School.
Okay,
So,
good. And any plans after that?
maybe lifeguard again.
That sounds good. All right, well, we want to
Thank
give you
you.
this, and I think we need a picture, of course.
Thank you.
We got one more over here.
One more.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is so neat when our young people make us
So
proud,
sweet.
so. All right, council, we are at the consent agenda.
A visitor's forum.
Oh, that's right. We've got visitors forum. Okay. Shelley, how many do we have signed up?
Yes, ma'am, we have 4.
4? All right, we will leave the time limit to 4 minutes tonight then. And if you will call our first person.
Jan Parasini.
Good evening. My name is Jan Paratini and I live in Kerrville. I'm here representing Gunny's Warriors, which is a local nonprofit that supports and is dedicated to Hill Country veterans. And I thought I had 2 minutes. Now all of a sudden I have 4, so this is great. I want to read off. We are having an event September 9th, 10th, and 11th at the Hill Country Youth Event Center in their park area. And it is a nationwide event, but Gunny's Warriors is sponsoring the first annual Field of Honor. Let me read about it. Gunny's Warriors is honored to present the first annual Field of Honor September 9th, 10th, and 11th, where community members can honor their heroes with the American flag. This year's theme is Honor Your Hero. Examples are service members, first responders, teachers, family members, anyone who has positively affected your life. We are encouraging the public to purchase a flag. Next time I come, I will bring you an example of the flag. It's on a 7-foot PVC pipe with a finial. The flag is attached. If you, on the order form, when you purchase the flag, there'll be an area where you can dedicate the flag to your hero, and we will attach that to the flag. We want this to be a community-wide event for everyone. We're going to have food trucks, bands, kids' activities, nonprofits. We'll have tables out, and it's quite a sight to see. We will have, no matter how many the public purchase, we've committed to 500 flags. So they will be in perfect rows for the public to view. We will follow strict flag protocol. They will be lit, illuminated all night. And so we are asking the public to foremost participate in this event. Bring your families. Enjoy this positive event for the community. We also are asking for support in volunteers. As you can imagine, putting up 500 flags the day before and taking them down the day after the event is a large task. But mainly we're asking for you to promote the event, tell your friends, neighbors, family about it. I have the flyers, you'll see it all over town, and there'll be a website where you can go and order a flag. But mainly, we're asking your support to come participate and make this a successful event.
Where's this going to be?
At the Hill Country Youth Event Center. And we're asking for volunteers, like I said, to help on the day before and after. So, and next time I come, we'll bring a flag to show you. Thank you very much.
And tell us again the date, Jan.
9th, 10th, and 11th
Of September.
of September.
And Jan, I'm sorry, but what happens at dusk?
At dusk, the mayor's husband will be playing taps every evening at dusk. We will have opening ceremonies on Saturday. We'll have closing ceremonies on Monday, and the VFW. I'll talk about that next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nikki Kane.
Nikki Gaines, I live in the city of Kerrville. I'm here to revisit the election integrity resolution that you passed at the last council meeting. It was passed by a majority vote, but as a voter and as a citizen, I asked questions, and there was no reasons or rationale given for what I personally considered extreme and unmerited changes to the resolution. The paper and a popular speaker here made it out that certain things had happened at the polling station. It has been proven, it's facts, and I can prove every fact, that nothing like that happened. But if that's why your decision was what it was, I ask that you go back and relook at this resolution. The same person that opined about a terrible voting experience has been proven not to be a citizen of Kerrville or Kerr County. He lives in Gillespie County. He didn't vote. The voter rolls show he didn't vote. The same person at the city council meeting on 6/27 interrupted a council member discussion after public input happened. And when he was very graciously reminded that the public input was over, he very rudely addressed Councilman Roman Garcia, and he says, "No, you're out of order." Again, as a voter and a citizen, I was appalled because there was no order in this chamber. He was not He was not acknowledged for having done so. He was not reproved. He was not admonished. He said what he did, and he got away with it. Mayor Eichner, I know I've seen you gavel down on other people and remind them to stop speaking, or in one case, you even disallowed someone to speak. I'm just asking that as a citizen, when we ask a question, we're not doing so to be rude. We really want to know. And when someone, even if it was me, was so incredibly rude, that we would all be treated fairly. Thank you. Actually, are there any responses to my questions? Like I said, there was no accident reports, police reports. There was no accident traffic study, and there were no formal complaints about anything that happened. So again, my questions are, based upon what does the citizenry believe that the extreme measures from 100 feet to 240 feet is justified?
We will not answer questions at this point.
At this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeremiah Romack.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Captain Jeremiah Romack with the Salvation Army here in Kerrville. And I've come to say Merry Christmas in July. Just wanted to tell you about some of the things we have going on this year for Christmas. You're familiar with the song, The 12 Days of Christmas, right? On the first day. Now the song's gonna be stuck in your head the rest of the night. So we're doing the 12 days of ringing this year. We're only gonna ring 12 days. Some people get excited about that. I do, because I've been listening to bells for the last 20 years at Christmas time. But we're only gonna do 12 days this year. So what we're doing to help promote that is ask that everybody come out and help support us so that we can have a successful campaign to raise money to put back in the community here in Kerrville. Our volunteer coordinator has been out, beating the streets, trying to get, and most of you have probably received a phone call from him already. Everybody knows Anthony, and trying to get people on board. So we're looking for businesses, civic groups, organizations to come alongside us and to help us ring this year. Last year we had over 20 businesses and organizations help us out. This year we're hoping for over 50 so that we can fill all 12 of those crucial days this year at Christmas. Last year we had a city council and mayoral competition in which one Brenda Hughes raised over $1,000 in 2 hours. And we're hoping to get your participation again this year. On November 30th, we would like to get everybody out there to ring for the first 2 hours of the day for us. And we'll see who wins the prize this year. We also have some things we brought along for you just to kind of remind you of that. Another thing that we're looking forward to this year is the first responders on the 1st. So we've already started talking with all of our emergency responders to come out and help support us on the 1st of December. And so we're hoping to have them participate with us as well. Our Register to Ring site is already up. It's registertoring.com if you want to go on and secure your place to ring a bell this year at Christmas. Again, we just want to say thank you for all your support and all that you help us to do in the community to help out the citizens here in Kerrville. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Captain,
you.
real quick,
Yes.
how did Kerrville stand last year in the state of Texas?
I should have bought the trophy. So we have what's called a National Commanders Challenge that every Salvation Army in the United States competes against. And there were 2 criteria. Number 1, who raised the most money overall in a 4-hour period. And number 2, who raised the highest percentage over their goal in that 4-hour period. Well, we came in 3rd in the most overall raised in a 4-hour period for all of the United States. We came in 1st percentage-wise. So this year, actually, if you watch the Cowboys play on Thanksgiving, I don't know if anybody likes Cowboys in this room, you may see myself and my significant other standing in the box with Jerry Jones and the National Commander during the National Kettle Kickoff as part of that.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
James Lyle.
I'm James Lyle. My wife and I live in Kerrville. I'm a rookie at this, so I'll try not to take the whole 4 minutes and give you a little bit of a break. I want to ask about some of the codes, and I understand why you have a 19-foot setbacks for garages, but why are carports under the same setbacks as garages? Because the garages impede your view if you're a corner lot coming around the corner, which I understood perfectly. I don't want to see any rules like taken off the books, but what I'm asking, my wife and I are asking, is that we separate garages and carports because they're two different things. A carport, you can see right through, there's no sidewalls where it would be blocking a view. And I've been working with some of your folks, and I'm sorry I don't remember their name, down under the parking garage on some of the setbacks and the guidelines for that. It's hard enough for folks in Kerrville with all the hail damage to their personal property to go get a car fixed from all the hail damage and that, which is why we're trying to put up a carport. I have 2 driveways on the same side of the house, and I'm sorry I drive a bigger car than what some people do. I drive a truck. But because of the setbacks, I can have a carport this wide. That won't even cover the headlights of my vehicle. If I don't, or if we don't put up the sides on the carport, there's no obstructive view, which is why we're asking for the separation of those 2 under the codes here in Kerrville. And everybody I've spoke with down there at code enforcement have been really polite and professional. They've came out and talked to me in that, but they said this is the forum to ask for or recommend a change. I'm not trying to tell y'all what to do or how to do it, because believe me, I don't know y'all's jobs. Seems like it's pretty tough with some of the stuff you got to deal with. But I know it's more than just my wife and I that it would help. A lot of people in Kerrville, because if you see the last few years because of the weather, the hail's getting bigger and it's coming more often. And we were helping our neighbor across the street trying to get her car under a little bitty carport. And if I didn't warn her to duck right as she was heading towards the carport, a piece of hail about that big around would have hit her right in the head. It hit right above her. So it's not only property damage, it's damage to your pets, yourself, if you go out there to protect any of your property or your animals. So that's why I'm asking for the change. If we could separate those 2, both of the codes would still be enforced. Because I've seen a lot of people just put them up and not follow the codes. But my wife and I are trying to follow the city codes. So that's all I
Sir,
have.
have you filled out a form asking for that
I've
with code development?
I filled out something with, and I'm gonna forget his name, young skinny fella. I know he's skinny because I'm bigger, but I filled out something with him yesterday or the day before when I went and spoke to him, and he said the best thing for me to do where any changes could start was right here with y'all. So that's why my wife and I are here tonight speaking to y'all.
Okay, all right.
Well, I'm speaking, she's just listening, so she could speak a little better than I could, but that's why we're asking, because it's not only gonna help us, but it's gonna help our neighbors, it's gonna help a lot of folks in Kerrville, in Kerr County.
Okay, thank you.
Thank y'all for your time.
That's the end of the citizen speakers.
Okay. Garimal, can we send this to you to say, take a look at it?
We'll do some research on that part and then come back.
Okay, thank you, okay. All right, that takes care of our visitors and citizens forum, and we are ready for the consent agenda. We do have a number of items on there for tonight. Most of these we have already seen and have discussed, but are there any, council, that you wish to have pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor. I'm going to request to pull 4B, 4D, 4E, and 4F.
Okay, 4B,
B, D, E, and F.
4B, 4D as in dog, 4E as in Edward, and 4F as in Frank.
We have a citizen speaker who has signed up to speak on 4D.
4D, all right. All right, council, any others? All right, then we need a motion for 4A, 4C, for G, H, and I.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, raise your right hand. And it passes unanimously. All right, Roman 4B, please.
4B, I just have a clerical correction to request on the second page of the resolution 23-2023. Sorry, I'm bringing it up real quick. I think it's relating to one of the positions. Yes, just a clerical error. The reference of a city clerk should just be city secretary.
Oh,
All right, any problem with that, Mike, on that? No, okay. All right, so that will take care of that.
And I'll move, unless anybody else has something else, I'll move to approve resolution 23-2023 with the amendment.
All right, do we have a second for that? We have a second from Joe. All in favor, raise your right hand. And it is unanimous. 4D.
Would you like me to go first or the citizen speaker? I don't know who signed up to speak.
Why don't you go first?
Okay. One of the concerns I have with the items on some of our consent agendas is that it's supposed, by policy, our consent agenda is supposed to be limited to routine agenda items, and amendments to something like our lease agreement with DBAT is not a routine item. This isn't something we do on an annual basis or quarterly or anything, or even every meeting. This is something that comes about as on a case-by-case basis. So I was surprised to see this one on the consent agenda. When we made the amendment previously in March, it was on the regular agenda. It wasn't on consent agenda. Second, my other concern was that we were just now finding out, and I didn't know about this, and it's not in the agenda bill summary statement, but the amended agreement that council approved back in March was never signed by both parties. And we find out approximately 4 months later, that the agreement was never signed. And it was because apparently there were additional amendments that needed to be made. My concern with that and just the solution, I don't know who's responsible in informing us about those things, but council, I feel like, should be informed if we approve a contract and 4 months later, even if a month later, it hasn't been signed because additional amendments need to be made. I think it'd behoove everybody for at least council to be made aware of that so that we know it's going to be coming out. So one of my questions was just why weren't we informed about it sooner? And then I do have, second, a clerical correction to make as well. On page 29, the last page of the amended lease agreement, it refers to the city's representative as Mr. Hoppy. That's not the case anymore, so I think that'll just need to be changed to our interim city manager, Miss Kimberly Meismer. So with that, I would ask for that amendment, and I would also ask just to get an understanding of why we didn't know about this sooner.
Okay, Ashley, would you like to share?
I will do my best. Good evening, council. So this lease was put on the consent agenda tonight because it was brought to you back in March. And staff felt it was prudent because there were a couple of changes that were made under the motion and a couple of additional cleanup items that we felt it was in the best interest to bring it back to the council. It took a bit of time to get those worked out and to bring it back before you tonight. So there's clear direction and expectations of all parties involved. And we did want the council the opportunity to review the final contract as it was discussed in quite a bit of length at the original the meeting. And are there any other questions that you have?
Okay. Do we have a citizen speaker, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's go ahead with.
George Baruti.
George Baruti, 1616 Glen Road. So, so kind of to hit Ms. Garcia's point, it appears, at least the highlighted sections that are referenced in these amendments are referring to the organization Kerrville Little League, which I'm on the board, I think everybody knows that, but prior to March, we weren't really asked anything about them, and to my knowledge, since March, leading up to today, we weren't asked about them. While we don't have standing to say yes or no to anything, a simple heads up would have been nice. As far as the specifics of what's in it, state of play is actually a pretty generic term as defined in the contract. It doesn't say anything more than requires participants to stay in the blocked hotels. It doesn't say how many or anything about that. So in theory, a state of play tournament is defined by having 10 teams, 10 players per team, and I guess one person staying in a blocked hotel would make it a qualified state of play. That doesn't seem like the intent, but it's how it's defined. The things that refer to Kerrville Little League, let me start by saying I'm not representing Kerrville Little League. I'm representing myself, being on the board though, and I'm going to guess that nobody else even knows this is happening tonight. But the advertising aspect, I just wrote down, it would have been nice to be asked or told even that it's kind of changing how that was going to work. The field use that's referring to Kerrville Little League, it does a couple of things. One, it specifically calls out games as being how it's going to be used. There's really no reason for that, especially since DBAT as the tenant has the authority to schedule practices by anybody. Why wouldn't they be able to schedule practices and not games for Kerrville Little League? It uses the word guarantee, guaranteeing field use, however, specifically removes the guarantees that were in the previous agreement, which talked about days and hours. And then this added thing, communication between Kerrville Little League and DBAT needs to be copied to the city. I'm here to tell you, we spent 5 years with the city involved in the negotiations, and it was difficult. This past year was smooth, and the main reason was because the Little League worked directly with DBAT. Under their authority, we were able to schedule what we needed, and we negotiated directly with them. It's one of those things where government just needs to step back and step kind of out of the way. The last thing is the fee for Kerrville Little League. It says, it's kind of weird how it's written. It says tenant may charge for use. However, tenant may only charge the fees adopted by the landlord. In other words, if the landlord, the city, decides they want to charge Kerrville Little League, they want to set the fee at $1,000 a month. DBAT wishes to just waive the fee. This contract is making it impossible for them to do so. I'm not sure what the goal was, but it might have been tenant may charge a fee, but no more than what the city sets. I don't know. Again, it would be nice if you're going to take all the guarantees out for the Little League, just take the Little League out of the agreement and let us negotiate directly with them, because that worked really well for us. Now, again, I'm asking you to look at it. I'm not asking you to do it on behalf of the league, because I'm not authorized to do that. But it just seems like, if you asked us, we might come up with that as the answer. And it's simpler for the city, because then you don't have to be involved in it, which wouldn't that be nice? So, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, there were a lot of things brought up there. As I am absorbing that, I think a lot of those things are not necessarily what is in front of us right now. So I think that we need to look at the highlighted areas and then the one additional change of the name on the last page. Council, anybody have anything that you would like to add?
I would respectfully disagree. The item that's before us is the entire lease agreement, the amended lease agreement. The item before us is not any specific provision in the agreement that we're considering. It's the agreement as a whole. And I think if council wanted to move to change anything or to strike anything, make any changes, we have the authority to do that because the item is to consider the amended lease agreement as a whole. So maybe we should look at that, and respectfully, what you said about what was stated by the citizen is not exactly what's before us. I don't know if you were referring to his statements or in terms of the item, but as he was making statements, I was using my search thing to review the agreement, and what he said is pretty much correct in here, and I'll make the statement one more time that I made when we originally considered this in March, I believe. But I don't understand why we are trying to get into an agreement and put provisions and requirements on Kerrville Little League when they're not a party to the agreement. The agreement is between the city and DBAT. And if we're gonna tell them what to do, that should be between either the city and Kerrville Little League directly, or between DBAT as the person who's leasing it, the entity that's leasing it from the city, and they can have a different agreement with Kerrville Little League altogether. I think that's a simpler way of doing it. I said that before, so I just figured it'd be worth saying it again since those issues were brought up, and I would be happy to consider changes to that again.
Ashley, any thoughts you have that you would like to share with us?
Sure, I'll address a couple of the comments. As Councilman Garcia stated, DBAT is our tenant. That's who we work directly with in regards to this contract, and that's why we did not work directly with Kerrville Little League. If any changes were to be made, Little League would have been informed by our tenant. And I would like to address the statement that the city was difficult to work with. The city had attempted to work with Kerrville Little League for several years, and we went above and beyond in our work with Little League, and we felt that we did an excellent job of trying to communicate and work with them. And we, path forward, decided that it would be in our best interest for Kerrville Little League to work directly with DBAT in order to kind of streamline the communications there, kind of take the third leg out of that stool, make it a little bit easier. But I do want to say that it was not on difficulty of the city's perspective in that.
Since my time is still going, I guess I'll ask, did the tenant inform Kerrville Little League then, as they, I guess, should have?
Inform them of what?
The changes? If I heard you correctly, I think you said that if any changes were made, then that would be the responsibility of the tenant to inform Kerrville Little League. Did that happen?
So I will let Nico with DBAT, he's here tonight, he can speak to that, but it is my understanding that Kerrville Little League has been playing at the sports complex and they've been working directly together. However, since the contract has not been executed yet, there hasn't been anything to formally instruct them and inform them of, and would be done after the contract is signed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't know what we would inform, what would we inform them of?
Well, I was just curious since, and I don't know if I misheard or misunderstood this statement, but it was my understanding that if any changes were made, and I'm assuming we're discussing the lease, so any changes to the lease that were made, that Kerrville Little League would be informed. And so we're having another amendment to this lease, even though it hasn't been signed yet, the original one in March. We're having further amendments, and those amendments also include Kerrville Little League. So the question was, since stuff has changed in the agreement, and at least considering being changed, and most likely are going to be adopted, have they been notified and made aware of this?
Yeah, I mean, George and Mario and them, I mean, we worked together this year. I don't see any changes that were coming to the next year, so I don't know, like informing them on something that is not going to change. I don't understand what.
So like one of the things I think changes is that if DBAT has tournaments there, and if you want the advertising removed that Kerrville Little League puts up, that's now their responsibility, whereas before it wasn't. So that's a change.
Gotcha. You talking about the banners that they put up during the week?
Any type of advertising, right. So that is a change. It seems that, I don't know if Mr. Broody had any conversation with you as a member of the board, but it's my understanding Mario Garcia, the president of the board, has not.
Yeah, no, I haven't talked to them about anything. I mean,
So they haven't been
putting
notified.
up banners, it's a simple change. I mean, we can talk about banners if we want.
Right. No, that's fine. I was just trying to check if they had been at all notified of any changes, and it sounds like the answer is no.
I mean,
So-
I thought it was go for it. We had a great season. Kids they had a lot of fun. Banners were great. Everything was great. So
Okay.
I didn't know that there was a change made, as far as, you know, us and them. If George wanted us to discuss, you know, banners and stuff, he can call me and we can discuss that.
Right, but the change is made in this agreement. You weren't aware of these changes?
I mean, I don't, the banner, like the little fine details, like, as long as, I'm a relationship guy, so as long as we have a good relationship going on
Okay.
with the Little League, the kids are happy, they're playing out there, and I'm good. I'm not looking into the minutia, basically. And if George, I mean, obviously he reads all about it, so if he wants to bring it up to me, we can have a discussion on it.
Well, and it looks to me like most of this has to do with banners, taking them down, putting them up, that kind of thing.
Yes, just a small operational
Small
change,
things.
taking an onus off of staff and DBAT and then putting it on Little League.
Yes.
So very minor change. And regarding the fee, so that would be on page 10, section 14B. It states the tenant may only charge Kerrville Little League the fees adopted by the landlord in its annual fee schedule relating to the Kerrville Sports Complex. And just a reminder that we have that fee set at $0 in the fee schedule, which will be presented to you for consideration adopted during your budget process. And it's been the same fee that we've recommended the last couple of years too. So no changes to the fee.
Okay, thank you. All right, Roman, do you wish to make a motion?
Sure. I will make a motion to approve the amended commercial lease agreement between the City of Kerrville and BTB Baseball Ventures LLC with amendments to, well, one amendment I'd like to add that I had written down is to include a provision in the lease agreement that the entry fee will be waived for Kerrville citizens with proof of residency for those who wish to go to the baseball, softball, sports complex to watch games and tournaments.
Where would you add that?
In the appropriate spot in the agreement as our city attorney sees fit.
Okay, what else?
Can I speak to that? Wait.
I think citizen comments is.
Yes, you may speak to it.
Thank you so much. You're waiving all the fees for every Kerrville resident? Is that correct?
That's correct. That would be my motion.
Okay. Right now, all the Kerrville teams get free entry to the tournament. So if the tournament costs $1,000, if you're a Kerrville Indians team or Kerrville Trash Pandas team, all these Kerrville teams, they get that waived. So if we want to do that, it's great, but I'm going to put the $1,000 back on them. So I'm just letting you know that. If that's what I do for all the Kerrville teams is I take that fee and I waive it because they're local.
So
And they get
are you
deals on
saying
all
that
Friday.
what my amendment, what I'm proposing is you already do?
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't think that's true. And we may have a misunderstanding about what I'm waiving then. I'm not waiving the fee for the teams to play in the tournament, because I know that's a separate fee. I'm waiving the entry fee for individuals who want to go.
That's fine. I'm just saying those teams that don't have to pay, and mostly their families are from Kerrville, they're not going to go to a different tournament in Bernie or somewhere else because our tournaments aren't as lucrative to them. From a yearly standpoint, they don't like to stay in Kerrville every weekend. They like to travel and get out. So I'm just saying that there's going to become some repercussions from what you're saying.
So if, I don't understand, because when we go to tournaments, I would say if any one of us were to go and want to watch a game, anybody in this room may most likely would all have to pay
Typically,
the entry
tournaments
fee.
are the families of the players. I haven't seen many regular citizens go out there and.
I'm a family member of a baseball player, and so.
Yeah, Little League's free for all. We don't charge for anybody for Little League as well.
Right, I know that's a little.
So now
bit
you're trying to,
policy.
now you're trying to basically say that.
Well, here's my rationale for it. I'll say
What I
this.
would
Here's-
suggest, Roman,
yeah.
is because this was not one of the highlighted things that was part of this, why don't you work that out, get facts, make sure you have a correct understanding, and that would be something that you would then bring back.
I would agree to that if council would agree to consider it a future agenda item. Because if I withdraw my motion now, and then I ask that be a future agenda item, I feel like none of I don't know what all y'all think about it, but I don't want that to just drop and you make me withdraw my motion just because it would be the most convenient thing to do.
Well, I feel we have some misunderstanding here, and that this is probably not the place to work all of that out.
Could I ask a point of just a clarity? I'm sorry, Councilman Garcia, are you asking for the entry fee to the tournaments for spectators?
Yes, spectators.
Not the teams?
Not teams.
Okay.
Yes, it's for spectators. Yeah. And just my rationale for that, I mean, most places, the tenant pays a lease to whoever they're leasing it from. In this case, it would be the city. And most likely that's why one of the reasons why they want to do an entry fee is to offset that expense, and it's a source of revenue for them. In this case, DBAT doesn't pay the city anything. And I don't understand why they have to charge our citizens. So since the citizens with their tax dollars are subsidizing this, because it's budgeted every year with $1 million of citizen taxpayers' dollars put towards this complex, I feel like it'd be best for the residents who subsidize it to enter free.
Actually, Roman, we talked about that before when we voted on this. Extensively. Well, we voted not to do that. I mean, we voted to do what's in this document right now.
No, we never voted on what's in this document right now. That's why it's before us right now.
Did you want to make a motion?
I made a motion, yes.
Did you get a second?
I don't know.
Okay, do you want to leave your motion as it is?
Yes, I will leave it as it is. That's fine.
Okay, so you want to add to waive all entry fees for individual spectators?
Kerrville residents, yes, with proof of residency.
Okay, do we have a second? Is there anything else that you wanted to add to this?
No, I think. No, that's fine.
Okay, do you?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And I understand what Councilmember Garcia is saying, I think.
Okay.
He wants to waive the entry fee. If I went to one of the games, I'd pay $10
Yes, sir.
to get in. But if I go in for free, then what you're turning around and saying is that you're going to not be able to waive the $1,000 entry fee for the local
Well,
team.
so I host tournaments, right? And so Little League, there's anyone from the whole city can come in all week long, from Monday to Friday. I host a tournament with, let's say I don't host it. Let's say I invite a softball group to come out here, and they're going to run a 500-team tournament at our place. And I have to tell that director, because we're renting the fields out to them, hey, anybody from Kerrville who comes in here, you can't charge them. They might, at that point, tell me, well, I'm going to run my tournament somewhere else, and I'm not going to run here. So all the money from the hotel, all that stuff could be blown up just because of what's going on with
That's
trying
where
to-
I was.
and
trying
the percentage of Kerrville residents that are going to come on the weekends, I mean, it has to be below. I've been doing tournaments for 10 years. If you're not a grandparent, a family member, a family friend of those players, which in our tournaments we basically have anywhere from, if you have a 50-team tournament, 4 of those teams are probably from Kerrville. The rest are from outside of the area. So you got 4 teams, and a lot of times those families, they don't mind paying. They're happy to be there. They're happy that, everything that's going on. And, if that's not true, Roman, then we can have a discussion about that.
Yeah.
I was just looking for a cost offset, and you answered my question.
Thank you,
on
sir.
that, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have a second to Roman's motion? I'm sorry, Roman, it dies for lack of a second.
That's okay, it's not a surprise.
All right, do we have a motion for 4D as presented?
I move we authorize the interim city manager to finalize and execute this lease agreement.
Second. We have a second. All in favor, raise their right hand. And there are 4 for. Against, we have 1. Councilmember Garcia. All right. Roman, 4E.
Looking at the calendar on this contract, or on this advertisement that went out, I understood that the award of the bid has to be done within 60 days of the opening. Is that correct?
Yes.
When was the opening done?
The opening was done at the beginning of May, and then we identified the award, who the vendor would be at the end of May. And then we got into contract negotiations and just communicating back and forth, and that's kind of what delayed that piece.
Okay.
But other than that, we look forward to continue working with Maxi. They've been our current vendors to date, and they've been very helpful, especially when we have like the snowstorms and other events. So we look forward to continue working, having that partnership with them.
Okay. So is the award of the bid that we would take action on tonight, is our action required to be within that 60-day period? Is that what it is? Because it was my understanding that it said in here, the formal award of the bid can only be by city council.
Yes, I mean, council is the one that has to approve it because of the dollar pricing for it.
Okay.
Because it is a one-year contract with 4 additional annual renewals, so we basically locking in the rate in at over 5 years. So that's what helps us tremendously, and that's what puts that number over. And we're budgeting, I believe it's $425 this coming fiscal year.
Okay.
For those funds.
Okay. So, I guess my only question is, and if this isn't too big of a deal, tell me, but I'm really curious.
I really don't think it is that big of a deal. It's just, I mean, part of it was just the communication back and forth with Maxi to get the right information, and having our attorneys review it, and then having their attorneys review it, and just kind of going back and forth. That's kind of what delayed it. In perfect world, I would have had it to you a lot earlier than today.
Okay. So I guess you picked up on what my concern was. I think we're past that 60-day period.
Yes.
And so, okay. So, and that's not like a policy we have to follow. It was just, I just want to make sure we're staying within the parameters of what we said when we put out this bid. And if we are now awarding a bid after 60 days, does that put us is that a concern somehow, whether it's with the bid process, or is that state law that we have to do
No,
bid? I didn't think so.
Maxi signed the contract, they've signed it, so it's just up to you all to sign it, and we have a valid agreement.
Okay, but I don't think that addressed the
and
time period.
Yeah. Again, what delayed it was the communication back and forth with Maxi and so forth with the contract. So
I understand what delayed
but
it.
I honestly, I don't think it really impacts what we're doing here tonight and what we're asking you to do.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure we're making sure we stay in the parameters, and I caught that as I was reading this summary, and want to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Completely understand.
And Councilmember Garcia,
Yep.
if you would, as you're reviewing the agenda packet and these issues come up, and if you would alert us to these issues, we might have a response that is clear and encapsulates exactly what you're doing. But when you call us out, at the meeting, it's hard for us. I mean, I had to remind myself of what the terms of the agreement are, but at the end of the day, if the vendor and the contractor is going to sign it, and you all agreed for the city manager to enter into it, we have a valid contract. That's basic contract law.
Yeah, and I do my best to do that, and I think you're aware on Friday, I sent an email, not on this item, because I didn't see this until, I don't know, after that. But I did send an email to a couple of staff members that gave me some information that I requested on Friday, yesterday on Monday, and so I do that when I can. But I also, just to finish off, I don't really appreciate when a council member brings something up and we're put on the spot and blamed for calling out staff for doing that. That's not my intention at all. I'm not calling you out. I'm doing my job up here to make sure that we follow whatever it is that we have done. I never mean any disrespect to staff when I ask questions. That's part of my job up here. And we have hired staff that is paid to do this. And so instead of looking at a council member and saying, why are you pointing this out? I would just respectfully say, why do I have to ask some of these questions or catch some of the clerical errors? And if, I think we're all working together on this, and this is just the process of it. So I think we can go from there.
Thank you.
Clear to you that I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying, if you give us 10 minutes head start on some of these issues, we could answer them, particularly the clerical errors. I mean, those items could have remained on the consent agenda. We could have made that announcement from the podium and gotten on down the road. we would never, I would never, speaking for myself, put a contract in front of this council that I thought had legal jeopardy.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mike. Are you ready to make a motion?
Yes, that's the only thing I had. I have no motion to make on this. I just had that question. Thank you.
Well, we do need a motion, though, you pulled it out.
Correct. I have no motion to make on it, though. I just had a question on it.
Motion.
Will you make a motion, please?
I'm happy to make a motion to authorize the city manager to award this contract as presented.
Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Jeff. All in favor, raise your right hand, and it passes unanimously. Roman 4F.
And this will be the last one on the consent agenda. I just want to make sure, I was looking at the proposal that was given to us. The proposal date, it looks like, was given in January, and it says that there was a statement in here that says that the quoted price is basically firm or guaranteed up until February 25th. So I just want to make sure, are we still in that guarantee, or are we gonna, is it dependent on something?
No, we are. So when we originally did these quotes, when we were putting together the '24 budget, and so when the streets department went out and got these quotes, that's what we based them on. And then the supplier then called back and said, we have this, but after a little while, we're not going to. So if you don't order it now, there's a good chance it's gonna be whatever. And at that point in time, Brandon double checked the quote. So we know that that quote is good.
We're all set. Okay,
Yep.
good, thank you.
Yep.
All right, you ready for a motion, Roman, with this one?
Yes, there's no more questions, thank you.
But you're not making a motion.
I have no, I can make a motion.
Would you please?
Sure. I move to authorize our interim city manager to pre-order a street sweeper that will be purchased in FY 2024.
I need a second?
Second.
Jeff, thank you. All in favor, raise your right hand, and it passes unanimously. All right, that takes care of the consent agenda, and we will move on to first reading of 5A. And Shelley,
Ordinance number
Thank you.
2023-23, an ordinance amending chapter 26 buildings and building regulations, article 4, Building Board of Adjustment and Appeals of the Code, Article 9, Building Board of Adjustment and Appeals of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, by amending requirements applicable to alternate members, making consistent the number of board members, amending the meeting schedule, and revising the requirement for a quorum, containing a cumulative clause, containing a savings and severability clause, establishing an effective date, and providing other matters related to the subject. There are no citizen speakers signed up.
all right,
Okay, one more time.
please.
This is just an update on some of the recommended changes that we want to make to the code that governs BVNA. And there are 4 major items that we're recommending changing. One is C, alternates. Basically what we want to do here is remove the requirement of alternates attending all meetings. I think this is kind of something that I think it will benefit us in the long run because as the alternates are sitting, they really don't have a vote as long as all board members are there. And so it gives us an opportunity to really coordinate with those alternates to really come and attend those meetings when their vote is actually needed. So that's one recommendation. The second one is E, terms of appointment. We want to recommend changing it to the correct number of board members when they expire. Currently, what we have is 4 board members expire on odd number years, and then we have 3 board members that expire on even number years. And so we want to just correct that to reflect what our current board is, and have 3 board members expire in odd number years, and 2 board members expire on even numbered years. And then we also want to remove the last sentence of that section because it refers to subsections in the code that was in there previously. And so we've changed that, and so it's just clean up, remove that section completely. And then also, one of the things that you will see later on in the meeting tonight is where you'll take in consideration the term recommendations, which I'll talk to you in the next slide about that. J is meetings and votings, adjust the meeting requirement from quarterly to as needed. I believe that is something that is desperately needed because sometimes we don't have any work for the board, and just to bring them in, just to meet, to say, thank you for meeting our requirement of quarterly meetings. Matter of fact, from 2009 all the way to 2018, the board did not meet. And from 2018 today, well, excluding the work that we've been doing to review the 2021 ICC codes, we've only met a handful of times prior to that. And so I think it's necessary, I think it would be more viable for the board to meet when needed. And of course, staff or the chair could call that board to meet as well. And the last one is just adjusting the quorum from 4 to 3. And so this is something that you'll take action a little bit later on. This is the term of appointments. We're making this recommendation to you for review. Again, this is just gets us back in line with the ordinance and what we're supposed to be doing. The term limit is 2 years. And again, as I mentioned earlier, trying to get to them to cycle off in a certain amount of period of time. So basically, recommendation would be for Mr. Rue, Mr. Motherall, Mr. Lowry to expire this year in August, and then Mrs. Hyde and Mr. Edmondson to expire on the 24th of August 31st. And the terms for BBNA is from September 1st to August 31st. Questions?
Council, questions?
What terms were your vacant ones? If filled, what terms would they hold? Did you scatter them one on 23? No, they'd both have to be 24 then, right?
Well, it'd be 2 years for them. And the code actually, now that I'm looking back on it, I don't think it actually talks about the alternates. It really was more concerned about the members.
Mhm.
And as they roll off, you would expect the alternates to become the members.
Okay.
What,
I mean, ideally, right?
wait, say that again? You didn't think it, what about the alternate members?
That I don't see in here, one of the things I didn't catch till just now, the question was I didn't see, oh, I'm sorry, shall alternate, no, I'm sorry, that's just the alternation piece. But I didn't see a piece of term of appointment for the alternates on here,
I think in
unless I'm missing it.
page 2, in that big paragraph, term of appointment, E, I think if this is what answers it, the city council may appoint members to the board,
Yes.
regular or alternate, for terms of lesser duration than 2 years. Is that what you're referring
Yeah,
to?
yes, exactly. I read further down, I missed that first sentence.
Okay.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
So they will just fill in, and their term would expire when
Yes.
that
From their
position's-
appointment,
Yes.
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 I'm sorry, I misspoke on that earlier.
All right, any other questions, council? Looks like it's a good cleanup of trying to get, bring things in line. So, questions, anyone? All right, do we have any speakers, Shelley?
No, ma'am.
Okay, do we have a motion for 5A?
Mayor, I will move to adopt ordinance number 2023-23 on first reading.
First reading, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Jeff seconded. We'll get you next time, Brenda. And all in favor, raise your right hand, and it passes unanimously. All right, 6A.
Resolution number 24-2023, a resolution providing for the city's approval or disapproval of the Kerr Central Appraisal District's fiscal year 2024 budget, and there are no citizen speakers signed up.
Thank you. Julie, we've seen a lot of you here this week.
Probably gonna wear you out over the next month or so, but it'll be all right. So this will be quick. I did put in front of you some paper copies of a couple of third-party budgets. I'm gonna be just presenting really quickly to you guys tonight. It was in your packet, so there shouldn't be any surprises, and we did talk about most of this at the budget workshop. But per, I guess, state law, you guys have to approve or disapprove the KRCAD budget, and there's a couple others following that. So just a couple of quick highlights. The KRCAD budget proposes 4.5% increase over 2023, so just over $53,000. Salaries, of course, like all of us, are the largest expense at 49% of the total. Slight increase in their audit expense, facilities maintenance, postage. We're all seeing that expense go up. And then the largest increase was in software support, which we're also seeing some of on our end. So just wanted to give a couple of pointers there on highlights, but we did give you the detail, and then Sharon also provided a multi-page report that gave explanation about each different line item and some really good detail on very specific. So she's here and would answer any questions if you have any to pose to her. Otherwise, what we're asking for tonight is just approval of the resolution for their budget.
All right, council, any questions?
And I want to, it would be an approval, but we still have to fill in the blank. So your recommendation is to fill in the blank with the word approved and then approve that?
Right.
Okay.
Right, because, so it's complicated, and Mike can probably explain it better, but all taxing entities have to approve or disapprove, and so, yes.
Yeah.
Sharon, would you like to say a few words? Sure.
Basically, you know, kind of like Julie explained, the increases are with cost of doing business. Everything's gone up. The software was the largest increase that we're looking at for next year. We're trying to bring our salaries up a little bit to be more competitive with the appraisal districts around me. I did attach another sheet, I don't know if Julie included it, that shows what some of the neighboring districts are paying their appraisers and the chief and that. So we're just trying to stay competitive, because it takes a lot of work and money to educate these people. Takes 5 years.
Any questions for her, council? Any comments? All right, thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 24-2023.
A second?
Mayor,
With the idea that you're approving their budget?
we have to insert a word. That's why I
Yeah.
made sure to state that out loud. There's a blank in there. We have to insert the word approved or disapproved.
Make a motion to approve this with the word approved in that last. I can make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Resolution number 24-2023, filling in the next to last paragraph of the word approved.
Jeez.
Fair enough?
Second, you want to second that? All right.
Hard, guys.
Thank you. All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, thank you very much. And Sharon, we're not sure we want values to go up again this year.
Well, it depends on what the market does.
I know. And we know it's not your fault, so. All right, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Sharon. So no complicated motion on this one, just looking at the Kerrville County Joint Airport Board proposed budget. Again, we've been over this in detail, and you guys have this in your packet, both the operating budget and the capital budget for the airport. We talked about this in pretty long detail on the 18th at our budget workshop. So the operating budget is balanced for the airport, and for the last several years, they have been operating on their own without city contribution or county contribution, other than the annual ramp grant that we're required to contribute as part of their maintenance plan, so that TxDOT will match that as well. Just small notable changes. They're going to have some new revenue coming in from the new row hangers that you're aware they're doing out there. Some increases in other lease revenue due to some CPI increases and things within their leases that we've talked about several times at different airport board meetings. Same as every other entity, including the city. Personnel, of course, increasing at 3.7%, which is very reasonable. Increases in supplies, a little bit of reduction in maintenance, but that's because of some of the things they've done in the last few years related to insurance and some other larger maintenance things they've done. Insurance and professional services, so their liability and workers' comp, we saw a pretty significant increase, which is kind of in line with what we're seeing across the board, and then small increase there in utilities. So that's kind of the highlights of their operating budget. Again, that is balanced. You have the detail, it's front and back in front of you with every line item. No major concerns or issues on staff's part. Mary and Stephen are both here. If you have any questions about operating or capital, they can address that.
Mary, Stephen, would you like to say a few words? And you both can.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Again, we're pleased with your contribution in helping us with getting those row hangers built. It made a big difference in our income this year, and we've also had some great new tenants moving in, which also helped with helping us balance the budget too. So we've been very, very thankful and grateful for your support here at the city with us on our operations budget. And the more we've been working on transitioning more and more of the expenses that we have, whether they're operations or capital projects, to be within the airport venue of what we've been able to collect in our rental income, as well as having new tenants join us as well. So this is all on a good trend.
I was just supposed to be the skinny guy with the good-looking face, but you know, that Christmas in July, that skinny part hadn't helped me any. No, just a quick thank you, just to echo what Mary had said. Thank you all so much for your support. I appreciate you guys coming to the board meetings and paying attention to what's going on at the airport. When I started 2 years ago, there were a lot of stalled projects, and it's real nice to see them all of a sudden kick off and get going and happening just right in front of our eyes. And even the new projects seem to be happening a lot quicker than the old projects did. So thank you for your continued support. And also, too, just remember we get, for every dollar we spend, normally we get 90 cents from TxDOT or FAA. So it's nice that we only have to spend 10 cents and y'all get 5 of that and the county gets the other 5. So thank y'all.
Well, it's good to see your rollover projects that are coming to fruition and your new projects. So I'm excited about that. So this is great, great. Council, any questions for them?
Just how many hangar spaces are y'all short right now, Mary?
So we have a waiting list. It's probably, in numbers, probably in the high 20s, 30s. But as we started working on the row hanger project, you know, we ended up calling everybody. So a lot of people, and this is what has been seen in a lot of other places in Texas and throughout the country, is that folks that want to have a hangar, they put their name on the list whether or not they need the hangar right now, or they might be buying a new plane, or they might be thinking about moving to Kerrville. So when you finally get to calling them up and saying, okay, give me a deposit, come on in, we're ready for you. Well, wait. So again, the TxDOT is doing a big study of trying to figure out what actually is the hangar deficit. So Crystal she does a really good job of tracking all the different folks and what their needs are. And of course, we have folks internally, we have got different size hangars within and different ages of hangars. And then we've got folks that are in one hangar that wants to move to another hangar. So it gets kind of complicated, but yeah, we've easily we've got plenty of demand for what we're building right now.
Good for y'all.
Yeah.
So, and I find it interesting that TxDOT is such a part of airports. You know, they're supposed to be cars and highways, not airports.
Transportation.
Transportation piece, yeah.
And they are a big part. And just to let you know, they're doing a huge their whatever 20 or 50-year plan, their Texas Aviation Systems plan right now. So they are going through and looking in all the corners and trying to ask us all sorts of questions about what's going on. And again, they're working with Kimley Horns, which you all worked with Kimley Horns. So TxDOT's working with Kimley Horns. So we've got a good relationship with both of the consultants that you all started with in the beginning, as well as TxDOT's really pleased with what they've been doing as
And
well.
share with us what's happening right now.
I've got to thank Stuart and Julie and everybody and Michael. We've got we worked on a project here for a couple years, and the city crews were out today laying asphalt on our runway. So it was just, I had a big old smile on my face. I walked in about 7:30 and looked out, saw all the trucks all staged, and then watched all the asphalt trucks come in, and I was just like, thank you. So thank you. I'm very, very grateful. Your crews are great. Everybody was fabulous. It just kind of clicked, and the asphalt started coming in. So they laid about a patch of swath about whatever the size of your patch. Is it 12 feet or 15 feet? 12 feet, and 2,600 feet of asphalt, 12 foot wide, and they'll have 3 more of those passes to go through. So we're very excited about having that.
That's exciting.
And I was really excited. And I think Stuart came out and took some pictures. I might be on Facebook by now, knowing Stuart,
okay.
so they'll be out there. So thank you for everybody and Michael for helping getting all that put together.
And
It
it
was a bit
sounds
of a
like you're
challenge.
not going to have rain to interfere.
I know, it was like great, all that pavement guys are so happy, it's like perfect weather, so it was great, so it was good.
All we
So
needed
thank
was
you.
heat, and we asked for it, and we got it.
Like the one person asking for no
That's
rain.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more thing, Mayor. Just looking at the capital budget here, and this is what we talked about last Tuesday, and you may have some questions. This is the potential land purchase that they're looking at for expansion. in the future. Again, we talked about that in detail, but we're looking at allocating $350,000 within our CIP budget as a set aside for that. Keeping in mind it's early phases, so the potential there, of course, is the 90-10 split with TxDOT as a reimbursement type if we were to qualify. Otherwise, it would be our recommendation to set that 350 aside for that potential purchase.
And that's exciting because that's one of the, we haven't had an expansion like that forever.
Yeah.
So that's
Be very
that's-
helpful for that point of me being able to predict, to start looking in the future of where it wants to go
Yes,
to. So I'm
that's-
pretty
that's
excited about that
wonderful.
as well.
Well, that's it.
Anything
Just-
else? Okay.
No, ma'am, just asking for approval of their operating and capital budgets as presented, as will also be presented to commissioners, and then will also be within the citywide budget.
Okay, all right. So is what we have in front of us here, is that good enough for our
Yes.
motion? Okay, all right. Does someone want to make that motion?
I'll move that we approve Kerrville-Kerr County Joint Airport Board operating and capital budgets for the fiscal year 2024 as presented.
Second.
We have a second from Joe. All in favor, raise your right hand. And it is approved. All right, thank you guys. Keep up the good work.
Okay, last one for me for right now. Look at the EIC proposed budget. So EIC met a few weeks ago, and Trina had worked through a budget process with them, continues to work through cash flow and some project items with them. And so we put together their proposed budget for '24, keeping in mind that we only budget existing and committed projects. So they do have projects that come to you for approval throughout the year that are not included in the budget. So just to keep that in mind. Sales tax, you'll see there that fiscal year '24 is budgeted flat with fiscal year '23's budget. We may adjust that, as we go through the year if need be. Unlike the general fund, we don't have to do budget amendments to make that happen. So just looking at cash flow, being very conservative given what the economy is doing right now and what we're continuing to see as trends in sales tax. So interest income, just like other funds, we're doing very well for fiscal year '23. We expect those rates to carry on at least for several months into fiscal year '24. So we'll watch those. We don't rely heavily on those, but that's their total revenue budget there of $5.4 million. And then on the expenditure side, really just their regular administrative expenditures that are very set. The addition there is legal services that we actually added in fiscal year '23. That's just in the event that we need to use outside legal counsel, and I believe it's in the agreement that they let EIC know prior to doing that. And then some training that was added. There's some training statewide and beyond on specific economic developments that we put in there just as a line item in the event that some of those board members might like to attend some training. So everything else is very same as every year. Professional services, that's the services that the city provides to EIC for a multitude of reasons, and I sent a pretty good explanation and breakdown of how we're trying to analyze and track that better. And then the KEDC portion of the budget, they were authorized within their 3-year agreement to ask for up to a 10% increase, and they came and gave a long presentation of their budget and requests and what they were looking forward to doing in the next year. So then your scheduled debt service and then your project contributions down there, you can see planning on spending some money this year, hopefully, on the hospital project, with finishing that up next year. And then the downtown streetscape was just approved by EIC not long ago, continuing on River Trail, and then the upgrades to the Travis pump station. So the total expenditure budget of slightly over $3.7 million. Change in net position of 1.6 million. So EIC does have a pretty healthy cash balance, and doing some workshops in the future to start talking about some future projects now that we're kind of beyond some COVID and some other things that kind of slowed us down there for a few years. So what we're asking for is for council's approval of this budget for EIC. And again, this will be submitted to you as part of the fiscal year '24 citywide budget. Happy to take any questions. Michael is here, Trina's here, and
You guys have anything you want to share with us? I was talking to we don't have anybody in the audience, do
We
we?
do have one citizen speaker that has been signed.
Okay.
Todd Bach.
Todd?
I think I've screwed up.
Well, that's okay, Mayor. If you don't mind, I'd like to address the council and the,
Please
and the
do.
mayor. Thank you, Council
Please
Mayor
do.
Todd Bach, 155 Leaning Tree Lane, here this afternoon representing KEDC, the chairman. Also want to thank you for the support of the airport as part of our project, and part of our focus is aerospace and technologies, and having our amazing airport sure does make it interesting as we focus in on that sector, as we've proven that through KMM. Thank you for your support in the past and in the future. Gil here is our Ferrari, obviously, of our organization. I have an incredible board, Mayor. You know you, Sid, and Michael and Kim, and I can look back at all of the different staff support we get throughout the year, and very, very appreciative of that, and very appreciative of EIC in our funding. And thank you all for your support and everything we go out through during the year. And our goal and our focus, as you know, and I've been a part of this for longer than I've been on this board, actually, and it's one of my projects to focus on for personally me, is to see us grow our economic development sectors, always trying to put the pressure off the rooftops and onto the commercial side of building. And thank you for allowing us to do what we do. We do it with your guidance. We do it with the 2050 guidance. We do it with the county support. We do it with city staff support. Again, I look across this room and I see everybody that helps us out throughout the year. So just wanted to say thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you for being here. Okay, do we have a motion? Any questions? We don't have, that was our last speaker.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. All right, do we have a motion?
Mayor, I do have a question. Could you speak a little bit to the professional services, or, yeah, we're calling it professional services now. Some of the information that you shared with us, as well as when that agreement's gonna come to us?
I can. So I can give you a little bit without it in front of me. That's going to be kind of hard to recount. However, yeah, so basically that professional service component is what EIC pays the city for services that we provide to them. So finance, legal, engineering, public works, planning, economic development. I mean, there's a whole host of things that are wrapped up in there. And the discussion was last year to start some more in-depth analysis of exactly how we were spending that time. There is a lot of staff time also tied up in that tracking, and so we did it somewhat on an average level for now, until we get into more detail, just to see kind of what that looked like. We're tracking it by hour, by person, but we didn't get that granular when I reported out to you guys what we had spent, actual direct cost to the city through June. So it's a multitude of things that are wrapped up in that. I feel like it's going to take really a year and a half, 2 years to really get good data to say this is on average. The alternative to that, of course, would be EIC going outside and hiring, individual firms to be able to have the expertise to be able to oversee and manage that, so that it's in compliance with state law and other things that we have to do to make sure that they stay on the up and up. And then, of course, the facility that we didn't add any charge in there for any facility use. So there's some things in there that could get really granular that we leave out, but just looking directly at what the costs are to the city without looking at those. That's what that is. And there's a 2.5% increase over last year. And I think I pointed out in the email that average increase for payroll or staff time, which is not just payroll, but all things considered personnel, for the city this year is going to be close to 6%. So, we feel like that's pretty reasonable given the time that we each spend managing EIC components.
Are we expected to see that agreement for the professional
Yes,
services?
so that agreement has to go to EIC first.
Right.
And so because they've already reviewed their budget, you have to approve their budget. And then once that is okay, then we'll take that agreement back to them for that. But we couldn't take that back to them until that budget is approved. So you will see that agreement most likely on the 8th at our next meeting, if we can get that to EIC at their next meeting.
Okay, and on the increase that we're seeing in professional services, I'm used to saying administrative services. I
That's
think it's
all right.
just
That's
different
okay.
this
I
year,
get it.
because I'm looking at 2 documents here. Has the increase been due to increased compensation or additional time that staff is putting in?
As when we talked a couple of months ago, I can't tell you that because there hasn't been an in-depth analysis done since 2019. So I can't tell you that because we don't, as an ongoing rule, track that. We started tracking it in October, so I really don't have much to compare to other than going all the way back to 2019. So what I can say is it's less than what our personnel cost is increasing, and that is 90% or more of what that relates to. So that's what that was based on, was just trying to find a fair average to kind of compensate for what the city does, keeping in mind there's no way it's compensating for everything.
The average increase,
Yes.
For the previous years has been about 2% over, each year, so.
Okay.
It's a little bit inflated this year because of the total cost of personnel period.
By 0.5%, right. Well, and I'm really curious because, I guess what my conversation with Mr. Hoppy last year, and I include some of the information in my email to you
Yes.
on Friday, that a number he gave me was 172. And I'm just, 172,000. There were
Sure.
other numbers after that, right? But I would like to have an analysis done, and I know you're working on that right now, but it just doesn't seem to add up, I guess, how we're coming up with the number when we haven't done a full analysis of how we're coming up with that number, I guess, is the best way I could say
When
it.
172,000, when I went back and looked at that number from 2019,
Right.
that was itemized by person.
Right. I
Okay,
saw
what
that.
I'm gonna say to that is, though, there was no component of any of this software that we're using, there was no component of any of the meeting conducting, there was no component of anything that it took to get things, public notices, any of those things, none of those were included.
Okay.
So I think had they included those at the salaries and personnel and other costs that we were incurring in 2019, I would expect that number would be really, really much bigger than 172,000. And if you take that in consideration in 2019, what's happened to personnel costs, we're, 18% ahead nationwide of what we were before COVID?
Yes.
So you tack that 18% on there, plus add all those additional fees on there, and that number gets really big. So we can get that as granular as you want, just keep in mind that every granularity takes staff time. And every, hour that we're spending doing analysis on something like that is an hour we can't spend on something that's much bigger. That would be my only comment to that, is the more granular we get, the more time it takes.
Yeah.
Or if we were to direct bill, I think that number would be really big too.
Sure, yeah. And just to finish off,
Sure.
In whatever we have in our next fiscal year budget, you may have a good idea since you're doing some type of analysis right now,
Yes.
and you shared us a lot of that information, so thank you for that. Hopefully that gives us a solid base to stand on in terms of the number.
I agree.
Because the only thing I'm looking at is, we're being asked to approve a budget, but we haven't seen the background information to indicate this is the number that it is, and so I'm going off of what you're giving me, and so I'm trusting you with that information. But when we do our budget, and we're asked to approve EIC's budget, but when we do our budget process, we know, and there's a whole, analysis that you've done on this. When you requested to have a meeting with me sometime last year, we didn't go into too much detail, but you showed me kind of what you do. And so I think some type of analysis should be made, which you're working towards, so we actually have a good, solid number to work off of, just like we do with our budget.
Yeah,
is
and
all I'm
that's
saying.
what we're doing, and I think it is gonna vary from year to year, because some years will be really big projects, and some years there won't be as many projects, so it's gonna vary from year to year, so. But that's why, to my comment, it's gonna take more than, I think, 6 months or a year to really get good data, but we're just tracking on it as best we can.
Right, and like I told you, I appreciate.
And more to come on
yeah,
that.
and like I said in our October meeting, I appreciate y'all taking that step to do that, because I think it's
Sure.
needed, and so.
Well, that's what we're
looking
here
forward
for,
to
and
it.
we can show you, like I said then,
Yep.
it's an open book, you just gotta ask, and we'll give it to you.
Thank you. That's all I got, Mayor.
Well, we also need to remember that they've got lots of things that they're working on, and this takes, what you're asking them to do, Roman, is not that there's anything wrong with it, but it takes a lot of time. And so I think that we need to be very cognizant of their time to do that. Do we have a motion for 6C?
Move that we approve the budget as presented.
Second. We have a second?
I was gonna make a
Yeah,
motion.
thank you.
It's done.
And all in favor, raise your right hand, and it passes unanimously. All right. Thank you, Julie. We appreciate all of that. Thank you. All right. Water.
And we do have 2 citizen speakers signed up for this.
All right.
So I didn't know if you wanted.
Go ahead. Let's do you first.
Get David to advance the slide.
That's wise.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here. I've been asked to give a brief presentation on all things water. And you know I like a brief presentation. Unfortunately, this one won't be so brief. There's 32 slides for us to go over there, but we have been able to boil it down to a couple things. So if I get into too much detail, please say, we want to keep it a higher level, but on a couple different subjects, I am going to kind of get in the weeds a little bit because I think it's justified in in the drought conditions that we're in. But we'll start out with the fact that, a lot of people have been asking us, do we have enough water? I would like to come up with an analogy for people that may not be in the water business, because everybody wants to say, oh, yeah, we've got plenty of water. And my answer is, in times of drought, water's like money. You can't ever have too much, right? When you start running out, you tighten your belt and you do things that you may not do at other times. That's our drought restrictions. Those are our, as we work through our drought stages, that's how the city kind of tightens the belt on the watering around. And the way we do that is we look at our demand, we look at supply, and then we kind of marry those two together and decide where we should be in our drought restrictions. And so that's what we're here to talk about tonight. I'm actually going to talk about six different topics. One is going to be about the forecast. We're going to look at what we're seeing over the next 6 months or so. We'll look at sources of water, including all 5 sources that the city has to pull from. The demand, what the citizens are asking us to produce, safe operating capacity, our drought stages, and if time permits and questions arise, we may even talk about growth if we want to continue on the discussion at that time. So let's start out with the drought. Where are we at in 2023? Where, the USGS drought stages, how do we rank? You can see Kerrville there in the middle is the darkest brown or darkest red there is. We are in exceptional drought. There's not another higher stage. We are in the highest stage there is, and in these next few slides you'll see that we're going to persist there a little bit longer. So on the top right-hand side of this slide, you'll see the values for this particular graph are valid July 20th. This is when this started, what they're proposing to move forward. The next slide, David. And so you'll see the different colors on the right-hand side is the drought, the brown is the drought isn't going to persist. It's going to stay the same. Obviously, in our area, it can't get any worse. At least that's what they're saying. So they don't see any improvement in the next month. This is valid from July till October 31st, is what I was pointing out on the top right-hand side. Get a pointer going here. Right here on the. I'm trying to get a pointer just a minute. In this area right here, it tells the date. The next few slides, all the slides are going to kind of read the same, so we'll kind of go through that. Obviously, Kerrville is about in this area right here, and the drought's going to persist in the next until October of this year, October 30th. They're not calling for it to get any better. So we'll go to the next slide. As you move out into September or August, September and October, this particular one is calling for the same or normal rainfall pattern. And so those particular months, with August is still a dry month, September isn't normally a really wet month, October starts to get to be a little bit more wet, so we may see some rainfall starting in October, but no more than our usual expectation. So as it moves forward from November, December, and January, they're actually calling for a little wetter winter than what we usually have. This is about 30 to 50% chance that it's above average rainfall for those months. Does that mean we're getting out of the drought? Not necessarily. It just means that we have a better chance to have more rainfall during the summer, or excuse me, during the winter months. And then we look a little bit further out in the future and look at February, March, and April. Those are normally our little wetter season. We're going to have the normal amount of rainfall that we're forecasted to have the normal amount of rainfall that we have in those months too. So this is kind of the idea of where we're going. We'll go all the way out to next year about this time, still the normal rainfall amount, which is for those particular months, it's not a lot, June, July, and August. So the forecast is not calling, they are calling for 1 or 3 month period in there with above average rainfall, but over the next year or so, it's going to be roughly average, which is a lot better than what it was last year. Last year was super low amount of rainfall. So with that, we'll move over to our water supply and a little bit of our water sources as well. This particular graph shows where the Guadalupe River was last year. The brown line there in the middle is the flow. The green or the blue line is the typical flow. So you can see last year about now we're in the same kind of predicament that we're in now. Very, very low flow in the river. It hasn't changed a whole lot. So this obviously hasn't come out for this year yet, but we'll stay posted for that. Also, last year's rainfall you see here in 2022, we had about 11 inches over the course of the year. Right now we're at about 11 inches so far this year. So we've got about almost as much rainfall and that we've received all last year currently in this year. So better than it was. Right? So this is Headwaters' graph. This talks about 4 wells that they monitor out in the county and get the average of to trying to determine how much the impact of the pumping is having on the aquifers. This is what the groundwater district uses to move through the stages. On the far right hand side is where we're at currently. 1423 is the or 1403 is the average. If you look up in the middle of the graph, so here's where we are now. If you look up in the middle of the graph, what it tells us that the groundwater district is asking for roughly a 30% reduction in permitted wells. So they're asking for less water to be used out of permitted wells. Now the city doesn't follow that because we have a conjunctive use policy where we have surface water. We have actually 5 sources of water, but we do watch it because we are very interested in what the groundwater is doing, but we have more sources to pull from, so we don't mirror it perfectly. Okay. Go to the next slide. Waiting for program to respond. Martin, can you forward us one slide? So the water demand will be the next thing we talk about once we get that to pull up. The city of Kerrville's demand is between 2 to 8 million gallons a day of water. It's typically what we use. In the wintertime, we use about 3 million gallons a day. In the summertime, with irrigation, it goes up to almost 8, unless we go into drought restrictions and kind of pull that back a little bit, if you will. Our reused water, or excuse me, our wastewater that we collect every day from our citizens is about 2 million gallons a day. So we pump that back, or after our citizens use it, we receive about 2 million gallons a day of wastewater. That's important because it goes to our reuse pond. We're able to use that reuse water for our customers out there that have golf courses or ball fields or whatever. We're able to put that out on there. So currently we capture, out of that 2 million gallons, we return about 150,000 gallons a day of water back to the river. And so it's a lot less than it used to be, but that's the demand that our city, demand and supply, if you will, of what the city demand of water and supply wastewater that they're giving us. So next one then. Still have a blank screen, so we'll go back one slide. Martin, it's still blank on the up top, so. Water sources slides, next one. Okay, so the water sources there. Oh, technical difficulty here. Oh, it's just the full screen, so go back to the previous line. Sources of water. City actually has 5 sources of water when we're going to need it to work later, so that's kind of why I'm wanting it to bring it along. But 5 sources of water is the first of it is the surface water. Of that surface water, we have impounded run of the river, which actually is flowing through the Guadalupe River. We have impounded surface water, which is stored in Emmets Lake behind Chili's. And we have groundwater, which is all of our wells. Have ASR water, which is surface water that's been treated that we've stored underground that we can use during these times. And then we also have reuse water. So those are our 5 sources that we're able to that we're able to juggle from. Like I said earlier, our groundwater district, we don't follow their rules specifically because we have all these other sources. So our surface water, and if y'all can follow along, this isn't the first time I've had trouble with this PowerPoint, and so it doesn't have page numbers on it, but we are actually on the one that's called surface water. Okay, and you'll see on that slide, those are our surface water permits. We have 4 of them. In the previous slide, so we're having a little technical difficulty, but when I talked to you about the supply of water that we're giving to our citizens every year, if that slide would have come up long enough for me to explain it to you, it actually shows that we use about 4.2 million, 400. Let me start over. That slide would have showed you that we use about 4,200 acre feet of water a year. So these next few slides are going to tell you water on paper. How much do we have? This particular one is the sources of water right here. Shows you, at least on paper, we have 6,051 acre feet of water to pull out of the Guadalupe River. So on a good year, we have more than enough river water to supply our citizens the whole allotment of water that we would need in just our surface water permit. Okay, additionally to that surface water, we have 840 acre feet stored in Nimitz Lake. That's the lake that's behind Chile again. That's different water. It's not run-of-the-river water, but it is stored water. And the reason that's important, and we make that distinction, is the run-of-the-river water is actually the water that's flowing through the river. We have the rights to pull some of that, but we have the full right to pull the 840 acre feet annually. You get 840 acre feet per year that you get to pull out of that. And so the TCEQ makes you report to them differently as to what you're using, and so we've been following TCEQ's rules on all of these items. But that's the main difference there that you're going to see in those two sources of water. One thing that a lot of people, and we've had some citizens send emails and concerns about the city's using up all this water. Well, they look at the river gauges and they say, hey, the city's, needs to mirror these 2 gauges, and they feel like the river is actually a pipeline from one gauge to the next, and that it ought to just mirror one another perfectly, and it just doesn't. There's sections of the river that actually are gaining water, and there's sections of the river that are losing water. And there's actually people that have pumps in our lake out there that are pumping water out of our lake that we don't account for. And so all that's considered, and I should say the gauges too. When the way these gauges work is that they measure the depth of the water, and then they multiply it times the length of how wide the river is. Well, the particular gauge that likes to be pointed at is the Bear Creek gauge. Well, it's on Bear Creek Crossing. That section of the river is tremendously wide. And so a fluctuation in the water depth in that river, which happens pretty regularly by swimmers going down there and putting rocks in front of the dam to dam it up a little bit, causes that gauge to increase. We go out there, remove the rocks, but we can't keep up with it every day. And the accuracy of it, the narrower the section of your river is, the more accurate it is. And so that wide section, moving just a little bit, changes that flow substantially. The other gauge that we compare to is below the dam, and it's a lot smaller section of the river, and therefore a little bit more accurate. So we do report to TCEQ how much water we're pumping through or allowing through our dam. It's actually dictated to us by TCEQ. We do it weekly with them, give them all our reports, and they say, okay, set your dam to discharge or allow this to pass through your dam. And so we abide by that, and so far it's been working. Obviously there's areas downstream of us that don't have water in the river, but I don't know that's the city of Kerrville, that's all our doing. It's a dry time. There's areas like the creek back behind my house, it's dry. Obviously it doesn't flow into the Guadalupe River, but my point is there's a lot of dry creeks between here and Comfort and Center Point that are dry, that are not adding anything to the river. So all that being said, that's kind of surface water, really high level. If you want some more detail, happy to get into it, maybe at a workshop or whatever we need to do, but that'll get us through this evening's discussion. Okay. So let's talk about groundwater next. you'll see on this slide that we have approximately 3,605 acre-feet of water in our groundwater permit. Again, our surface water, our water needs for the city is around 4,200 roughly, a little bit less than that. So you can see our groundwater permit is actually very close to what we almost need for a whole year's supply just in itself. We don't like to rely on our groundwater. We would prefer to rely on surface water because it's the first water that gets out of our reach. So we pump as much surface water as we can, and we even added a little bit of Nimitz Lake water in, and then we also rely on groundwater as well. So we're kind of reserving that for a little bit later on as the drought kind of persists and goes on, because it really doesn't get outside of our reach as fast as the other water will. I have, so I've been asked a bunch of questions about groundwater as well, because there's some questions about our well system and how is it operating. So I put this slide in here. This is just a slide that I pulled off the internet because it talks about the cone of depression. And what the cone of depression is when it's basically a change in pressure head from a well. So you can see on this particular graph or this particular slide, this is the well. This is the normal elevation of the water in the aquifer. And this, when the well starts pumping, it actually pulls the water down out of the hole, and it causes this kind of cone-looking phenomenon to happen. It's called the cone of depression. So if you drill another well within that cone of depression and it's shallower, just barely in the water, you actually can cause it to not have any water. So it is very important that you understand this cone of depression and you know your area, so you know how far apart to put your wells and how deep to put them as well. So ideally on this particular picture, you would have the next well would be not here. It would be like over here, because it's going to have a similar cone of depression. So as soon as you put a well here, obviously the cone of depression comes back down and they start interacting with one another. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to our well field itself, because we are seeing that a little bit currently. So we'll go to the next slide. That was a lot simpler than what our aquifer looks like. This here gets a little closer, and then the next slide is going to be an actual picture of some of the wells that we do have in our aquifer. So that particular cone of depression was in the unconfined aquifer, which would be essentially this well here. So let me talk a little bit about hydraulic conductivity and transmissivity prior to. Everybody likes that. Hayes has the word of the day every now and again, so I hit him with that. So you go look that up, Hayes. We'll talk about it later. So see how I do. So conductivity, hydraulic conductivity is how fast the water is moving through the aquifer. And the transmissivity, and this is my language, not the actual definitions there, the transmissivity is the thickness of the aquifer and how that water is moving through that thickness and how fast it can come. All of that plays into the cone of depression. And so our particular wells, the one we just talked about, we do have a few wells that do not have a confining layer. But the majority of our wells have what they call a confining layer, and there's a layer of shale above them, essentially, because we're in the lower Trinity, and that shale is the Hammett shale. But as we drill down, we are going to be below this confining layer. That's where our pumps are going to be, and this is all going to be cased off. And so there's actually head pressure coming from the bottom. This is the part that I'm worried I'm getting to too much detail. So if y'all are like, hey, we don't really care, please stop me. However, the pump is set down here at the bottom, and this water is actually coming into the bottom of this well, and it's pushing this well pressure up in the hole up to the normal pooling elevation of that aquifer, which is way over here. And how fast that water moves through the aquifer is the conductivity and the transmissivity of the aquifer. So the cone of depression is actually kind of inverted on these wells almost, because as we pump them down, we're pumping down this water column, and the water's trying to keep up by coming in the bottom of the well. And it's all about that pressure. So how fast can that pressure, how fast can that well recharge itself versus how fast we're pulling it out. And so those are the two different types of wells that we have here. Most of ours are this is actually artesian pressure well, and that is where we are. So as that comes in, we'll talk about proximity of the two wells. Let's go to the next slide. Maybe we can do that easier there.
There you go.
So now we're really out in the weeds, right? So this one here is very hard to see, but this was actually put together by the geologist in our area. Their names are listed up there, Bryant and Bobby and Digger. They have done a lot of research in our aquifer. They are the ones that had said, hey guys, I think there is an Ellenberger aquifer below the city, and I think we ought to go look for it and see how much water is in that aquifer, because we really believe that there's a lot of water down there. And so they've put together some maps, which I have in my office. This is a picture of one of them. I probably have 5 or 6 different maps up there. But the way that this, in the very center of this, let me see if I can zoom in here. So that's the picture of the city of Kerrville, and this line that goes through here is just the line that connects all these well sites. So these are actual real world wells that exist in our county with the actual depths and the actual data that's associated with each one of those wells. So let's move up here. We'll stay zoomed in, because this is the city of Kerrville area. This is our Methodist encampment well. This one's not one of ours. This is ASR2, Meadowview.
We can't see your pointer.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Don't zoom in anymore, but this is the Methodist encampment well. This is not ours. I have to zoom in a little bit, or actually, let me go to here. Yeah. So this is ASR2, Meadowview, the abandoned ASR3 well. This one is the Loop 534 well, and then it just kind of keeps on going. I won't bother you with all the different ones, but these are real elevations and real depths. Reason that this is important to you is this blue area here is the Ellenberger aquifer. This gray area is the Pennsylvania shale. The Pennsylvania shale has been eroded off in these areas right here. So this is ASR2. See if we can zoom in again. If I can I can't keep my pointer and zoom in, so I apologize for that. Maybe it's easier for me to point on the wall up there, but there's areas in here that the Pennsylvania has been eroded off. The Ellenberger is right there. We're able to get water out of it. I wish there really could point to both of them. So let's look at these 2 wells here, and I will move on. I'll pass groundwater, but we've had a lot of interest in this, and we've had some discussion as to why these wells are working off of each other, and we should have known this all along, and it is more sophisticated than that. It is kind of the point here. So as these 2 wells were drilled, this was the Meadowview, and again, Loop 534. They are in the same area, as they're over a mile apart, but as we know now from drilling the wells, they're not under the Pennsylvania there. They actually go right into the Ellenberger aquifer. There has been a question of how deep the city is. We've always known, the city's always been in the Ellenberger. Well, it turns out that the bottom of the Trinity aquifer is the top of the Ellenberger aquifer. And a lot of times, all of our wells, as you can see across the board here, this line here is the bottom of the Trinity aquifer. Most of the wells stop there, almost all of them, until you get to a point where Headwaters started drilling deeper and saying, hey, let's explore this. Let's see how much water there really is down there. Let's determine how deep we should go. And that's when they drilled this well, and they drilled one out in the county, past the Pennsylvania and all the way down into the Ellenberger. And so as we run those 2 particular wells, this Meadowview well and the Ellenberger, or the Loop 534 well, they do, after a prolonged period of time, they'll start showing influence of one another. The cone of depression starts to show up, and they're not quite far enough apart to where they don't have any impact. Now, we've run them both at the same time quite often, but after a prolonged period of time, they start impacting each other. And so just keep that in mind as we move forward, and I won't get into too much more detail, but I did want to show you this map to show you there's a lot going on underground. And the more that we know, the better we feel about it. Most everybody that's digging, that's drilling, producing water around here is producing it above this Ellenberger aquifer. There's only a few of them that are down into the Ellenberger itself. Okay. Is there any questions on that before we move on? Because the groundwater. We've had a bunch of questions about it. I just want to make sure that we're able to put some of that to rest. So another source of water is aquifer storage and recovery. You can see on this particular slide, well, the city of Kerrville and UGRA and the city have actually started this, one of the first aquifer ASR wells in the state of Texas. Currently, we have about 875 million gallons. That's 2,682 acre feet. There again, it's about half a year's supply of water in the Ellenberger. Or excuse me, in the ASR system. Got Ellenberger on the brain. Limited of those systems is just, just the cost of it. We could do more. Everybody asks on these future water sources, why don't we drill more ASR wells? Well, you have to have water in the river to do that, because you got to get the water to put in there before it's beneficial to just drill the wells. Otherwise, you don't have anything to store in it during the good times. Here, of course, is the reuse pond. The reuse pond has been, during this drought, has been very good for us, in my opinion. It's allowed us to get some of the demand off of our groundwater because of our customers that were not using groundwater anymore. They're using this reuse water. Pond was built in 2018. It was built about 90 million gallons. Right now, it's got about 54 million gallons in it. It's 166 acre feet, roughly, of how much water is currently in there. Of those customers, you can see on there that the Parks Complex own it, Scott Schreiner University, or Scott Schreiner Golf Course, Schreiner University, River Hills, the Animal Shelter, Comanche Trace, Tybee High School, soccer fields, water reclamation plant, and then also mobile water users who go pick it up at the plant themselves. Those mobile water users don't really count for much, but you'll see as we go into different drought stages, we still allow people to use that water for construction and other things because we want them off of our potable supply. So we point them to go to the wastewater plant or the reuse pond to get that water. Okay. So those are our 5 sources of water. Now let's talk a little bit about supply, and I'll try to pick up, these next 2 slides are long ones, and then we'll pick up speed a little bit here. So you may ask yourself, how do they how they make the sausage? How we get down to really what is available to us? So what we've done here is we put this graph together that shows all of our sources of water, and then what is their mechanical capability, and what is the actual safe operating capacity of those systems. So let's just move down here and we'll look at ASR2. If it was a perfect year, on any given year, that particular pump would pump about 1 million gallons a day. And 100% of our daily operation right now, it's down. It's almost in half. It's 500,000 million gallons, 0.576 million gallons a day. So it is showing, that was when it was new, as the 1 million gallons. It doesn't really produce that anymore because the pump's starting to wear a little bit. But there's also the groundwater starting to recede. And so we monitor that. We look at that every couple of weeks. We'll go in and take a look and say, how fast are we being able to pump the water out of there? What are we going to be able to meet the citizens' demand? We also look at curtailment of the surface water treatment plant, and how the water master is treating us. And all those components are pulled together on this slide, and it produces this number right down here, which is called our safe operating capacity. What I'm going to propose to do, and actually I was writing the adjustment today to present to Ms. Meismer probably tomorrow, is to remove some of the safe operating capacity for at least 2 components that were. One of them that came up this morning, we had something go wrong at the plant, and we can't get the commercial or ultrafiltration plant to stay on. It keeps blowing a fuse. It's like a 50-cent fuse, but we can't find out what it is. So in the next few days, we'll find out what it is, but it's a question of, do we want to remove it from our safe operating capacity right now because we really don't have that plant online, or do we think we're going to get it fixed in the next few days? So I'm kind of struggling with that right now, and we'll talk more about it in the morning, but you may be seeing us adjusting that safe operating capacity to temporarily take that plant offline or temporarily curtail our surface water plant. Also is that Kona depression issue that we talked about earlier. Is Loop 534 and Metaview. Do we want both of them on there, that they're 100% reliable 100% of the time, if we know right now that we can't continue one run all the time? Yeah, my recommendation will be that we remove one of those. And so we're going through that process right now and revisiting that, recalculating all this. So you may see a new self-operating capacity in the near very near future. And that may force us to go into stage 2. A matter of fact, I believe it will, but we'll talk more about water demand and how the triggers for stage 2 happen. That's this slide. So what this particular slide shows is all of our different water sources combined together, and then also how much we're pumping out to the city. So here's our surface water treatment plant. Here's the wells, ASR, 1, 2, and this is the ASR well combined with the, actually this is how much we're stored in there. So you don't see we haven't stored anything. You combine all that and you get how much water we've sent to production, how much water we produce daily. And this is the real graph that we use every day that we fill out. So we use about 4.7 million, 3.9. This is the first part of July. And as you can see, we translate that into our safe operating capacity. What's the percentage of the safe operating capacity that we're using that particular day? So here we've got anywhere from 65, there's a 71, there's a 78, 73, 74. The reason that those numbers are important are those are the triggers. On a 7-day average, once we hit 65, we go into stage 1. Once we hit 75, we go into stage 2. Right now, we're right here is what we've been looking at this last few days to figure out where do we need to be. You can see that we're above 65, but below 75. So it all is about how much water supply do we have and how much demand we're seeing. So as that supply goes down, we adjust the safe operating capacity, which was the previous slide. We adjust this number because now we can't produce as much water for whatever reason. If a component goes down, the water master tells us we can't do it. A well goes out of compliance, then we are not out of compliance, but starts producing less water. We adjust it. It there in turn affects this number, which also just kind of pulls that all the way across to say, okay, you're at this percent. All of this safe operating capacity in these different stages are in our ordinances. It's well defined in there when you go into what stage it is and what those different stages trigger. So with that, I'll answer questions about water demand. And I'll try to pick up a little piece of speed here. We're getting out of the weeds now and get more into the.
Are you proposing that we shut down one of those wells, one of the 2 wells that you were just discussing?
No, I wouldn't shut it down, but I would take it, me personally, I would take it out of the safe operating capacity because they do, if they run for a long periods of time, they kind of compete against each other. So that cone of depression question comes up, and for simplicity's sake, we'll use the first picture of the cone of depression. They're a little too close during these drought conditions. Now, during a regular year, we've never had any problem with them. They're being able to pump, we can run them both full time all the time. But during drought conditions, the water level's lower and we are seeing an impact. So yes, my recommendation would be to remove one of them from the safe operating capacity, still continue to use the well. It just takes it out of that calculation. It doesn't say that we can't use that well anymore, but we would alternate them, use MetaView one day, and we would use Loop 534 the other day. And that would just allows that fluctuation in the aquifer, allows that recharge to happen over a period of time, so you don't have so much demand for that area of town, if you will.
Which one would you recommend taking off?
Personally, I would do the Loop 534 well, because it's closer to the hospital over there. There's more wells around there than just MetaView, and so there's different. That was the most recent well that was brought online. That's the one I would do.
I think I'm just confused on the safe operating capacity that we have. If you remove it from that and the calculation, but we don't shut it off or stop using it, is that right? So how and I'm confused because I don't know about it. How can we take it off of the safe operating capacity if we're still using it?
So the way we haven't dealt with this before because we have 2 other wells that kind of mirror off each other, but in the last few months, one of them's been all live for maintenance. Actually, we're putting a new liner in it, so we haven't had to deal with that. So right now, what I would propose is that even though that well, our safe operating capacity, basically our firm pumping ability. And we don't want to get too far into a drought that says and then all of a sudden one of your wells goes down and you're like, okay, now you've lost 2 wells because they mirror off of each other. And so you want to kind of reserve that capability and not overstate how much water you have. So, because if you overstate that you can meet that demand 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, then it gives everybody the false sense of security that those two wells can run at the same time, full time. And being the condition we're in, I don't know that that's the best scenario.
Oh, okay, I don't know if that addressed how you can take one off of the calculation and still have it running. Maybe I didn't understand.
I think I understand what you're trying to ask.
Okay.
So, let's say there's 500,000 gallons per day that's coming out of that well that you take off of the safe operating capacity at 100%. So 75% of that number is your safe operating capacity. But you remove that number, now your total is less. So say it's 5 million and it goes down to 4.5 million. Well, now you're getting to that 75% a little quicker. Is that correct?
I'm just wondering why we would remove it if we're still using it. Like, if we were still using it, wouldn't the number just be less?
You get to your number faster.
Well, if we're still using it, if we have it in the safe operating capacity calculation, it says it's 100% reliable. And both of those two wells operating at the same time, we don't feel are 100% reliable at this time.
Okay.
And so you remove one, and now you do have 100% reliability at that volume.
I got it. Okay.
But you're alternating them back and forth.
Right. So then internally, y'all would be going back and forth depending on which one you want to pull from and the recharge.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay. We are getting closer to the end, so I'll continue on. So let's talk about stages now. One more slide, David. So if currently we're in stage one, you can see here on the board or on your slides that what stage one is compared to stage two. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. It actually breaks it down a little bit better. So stage one shows us these are the uses that are actually prohibited during both of them. Operation of a water feature, including a fountain that does not support aquatic life or does not use a recycling system, is prohibited during stage one or two. Washing down of impervious surfaces, kind of like sidewalks, things like that, is prohibited during 1 or 2. And then here's the differences between the two on this next lower part of the slide. Irrigation systems, sprinklers, soaker hoses can be used during stage 1 from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. That actually gets pulled. We shave a few hours off here and there because, like I told you earlier, most of the demand that we see during this time of year is irrigation. And so we actually change it from 6 a.m. to 9 instead of 6 to 10, and from 8 until 10 instead of 8 to midnight. So that's a big change for that use. Handheld hoses are the same way. We're shaving a few hours off the day there, from any day, any time, to any day from 7 p.m. to 9 a.m., kind of over the night hours. The reason that those hours were picked, a lot of people say we ought to be able to have this done in the middle of the night. Well, not all of our citizens have sprinkler systems. And so we needed some time, actually when this ordinance was written long before me, they said we need time for people to get home from work and want to water their grass, and that they don't necessarily have to have a sprinkler system, get them up at 2 a.m. to go water their grass. So that's why a lot of this is in there. And that's why these times are in there. Temporary fire hydrants are going to would be reduced from 25,000 gallons a day to 20,000 gallons a day. And this additional restrictions down here on just these stage 2. So there's use of water for dust control. This pertains to potable water, not the reuse water. If you want to use dust control, you go out to the wastewater plant with a truck, and you get a truck for construction purposes, and you take it to your job site, and you can use the reuse water for washing down, for dust control, or washing down, as it says in this last part, construction purposes. You can use it for that as well. Washing down buildings or other thing for protection. Washing down buildings other than for fire protection or when required for construction. So that particular uses, you could use reuse water for that as well. But those are the limiting factors on stage 2. Okay. So on little, here it is written in the ordinance. This is the ordinance language. We just condensed it so I don't have to read the whole ordinance for you, but kind of boil it down to what you can see there a little bit quicker. Okay, same thing here. So what have we done for conservation measures for people? Sprinkler gauges, typically you can get a sprinkler gauge up here. We've even had some moisture meters that you can get from our office. Dye for the toilet tanks, you put dye in there, see if your toilets are leaking. We actually have the meters, which has been a big help for our finance. You know, they'll actually send out a letter if we're showing that you have a leak. They'll send you a letter saying, hey, you know, you need to check on your meter and make sure, or excuse me, your watering wherever, you know, you may have a leak, kind of leak notice.
Is that always done by letter, or can that be done?
They actually do door tags and actually door knocks if they need to.
Okay.
Depends on the flow.
Okay.
What volume does that start at, Stuart?
It's a runtime thing more than a volume. And so if they see a continuous run for 24 hours, then that sends up a flag saying, hey, you know, we think you have a leak, because everybody uses different volumes, so. Conservation brochures and pamphlets that we've given out for people. Quick watering pressure issue, customer response. So we get out there. We have a lot of times people call us and say, hey, you know, the pipe's broken in our yard. Can you come turn it off? Yeah, let's get out there and turn that off. Matter of fact, we have a subdivision north of town that's called us probably 4 times recently to come turn their water off. And frustrating it is, but we know we need to do it, and I'm sure it's more frustrating for their owners. So, city parks, rainwater harvesting. You've seen that down at Louise Hayes Park, and then also water stickers and things, coloring books for kids that we've given out. So we are trying to conserve water and trying to educate people and say it's kind of like KPUB. You know, we want you to use our utility, but it's better if you preserve it, you know, for the future. So. With that, we'll go to the next one. Do we have questions? Do we have any questions?
So if we decided we wanted to go to stage 2, even though everything points to we wouldn't have to do that right now, we just simply need to amend it an ordinance, right?
So there's a couple different ways to go to stage 2. One is the safe operating, if the safe operating capacity changes, that would potentially force us to go to a different stage. Or if the city manager finds an emergency, they can declare that we automatically go to a more restrictive stage. And right now, with the ongoing drought and our calculations that we've done, since last week we've been working on them and saying, you know, we see well fluctuations a lot. You know, it's nothing unusual to see a little bit of a fluctuation in a well. This morning when they said, hey, the smaller water plant is down, our big water plant produces about 5 million gallons a day. The smaller one's a little over 1 million. And so when they were down, I was like, well, you know, we can probably make it up with wells for a day or two. You know, we don't want to cause a big hysteria of, you know, what's going on. But it depends on what we find's wrong with it. You know, is it something, if it's going to be ongoing that's more than a few days, then yes, then we adjust the safe operating capacity and say we want that out of our safe operating capacity. So as the use keeps going up, we ramp up what stage we're in, and we notify the public and we say, hey, we want you to use less water.
I would like to see us go to stage 2.
Okay.
I think it's the future. It doesn't look good, and if we could save some water now, I think we should do that.
Very good.
No, I don't know how anybody else feels.
Well, Mayor, one of our citizens in the audience there had several questions at the last council meeting, and I would like for him to have the opportunity to address those questions to Stuart.
Okay. Anybody else want anything before we bring our citizen up? Okay.
Still have more?
This is the presentation. I do have some slides in there if y'all have any questions about future growth. You know, that's been there's also been some questions about that. But it's really.
I've got 2 things, Stuart. First is I agree with the mayor. We should protect what we have.
Okay.
Second, Bobby Joins is a friend of mine, Bryant Williams, and I know what they do. I know how they do it. You know, they were Citizens of the Year last year. through chamber. Brian made mention, what if we went deeper with, the Meadowview well? He specifically said that one well. If we, would that be a possibility? Would that be something we could look at? And then your cone of depression, because you got 534 out there, if you went deeper on one, is that something, because he said we could go deeper with that well and probably pull more water. But, I don't know.
See,
I'm not trying to put
yes.
you on the spot. I'm
So,
just-
yeah, I think I don't know that, you could go deeper in that area and maybe get more reliable water. But if I was gonna spend the money knowing what we know now, the proximity of them, I would look, I talked to those guys last week, and we talked about well proximity and spacing and so on. And we've got some ideas on how far apart they need to be. I'd like to overlay that on a city map. And if it was my $1 million to spend is pretty much what it's gonna cost to drill a new well, I would go to a place that's further away, if there are any left in the city, and I would drill there in those same locations that they recommended to drill, and just look at it from that perspective. Going in the same hole and getting it deeper, we haven't had any success finding a driller that's willing to do that. Because they're afraid that they're gonna get hung up on something that's in there already, some of the casing or something, and they only do it by the hour. It's really roughly around $300-400 an hour for them to work to go experiment. And I would prefer to know what we're gonna get at the end of the day, if you will, and get another well. We know that one's pretty decent well, and I don't wanna mess that up. And so I would move over instead of re-drilling right there. But I think he's spot on. I think in the future that we follow their guidance, drill to the bottom of the Ellenberger or there's about what we think is the bottom of the Ellenberger, and try to produce that aquifer from that lower aquifer as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything else from anybody before we have our public speakers?
I'm interested to hear what you have to say about our water supply plan for the future. I think that's where several questions have come up about recently, and one that I was specifically interested in meeting with possibly you and our city manager about. So if you have any information that you could share,
Yeah.
be
Just
awesome.
Be riding with you.
No, you're good.
Yeah, this is fine. So I just have 3 slides on it, but we'll go through it pretty fast because I didn't prepare a whole lot of detail to talk about it. But this is all out of our long-range water plan. And what that long-range water plan did is gave us a look into the 100 years. Our 2050 plan was a 50-year plan. Water takes a long time to develop, and they know that. And they're saying, okay, so let's look and see, one, how fast is the city going to grow? What do we anticipate the city's going to, the demand for the water, they actually do it through the population, but the demand for the water is going to be over the next 100 years. So on this particular slide, you'll see the demand projections here. It grows anywhere from 1 to 1.5 is the annual growth, and that's been pretty consistent over the last 15 or 20 years for the city. We're not growing like some of the places up around Dallas or anything like that, but we felt like that was a pretty accurate growth rate for us. Current demand, this isn't a perfect number. This is a study, so it's a little bit off. It's 500 acre-feet off, but that's kind of what they're saying the current demand is. By 2050, the demand's going to go up to 6,700 acre-feet a year. So we're going to have a delta of water that we're going to need to find of roughly 200 acre-feet, or excuse me, 2,000 acre-feet. Where are we going to find that, right? If you look all the way out to 2120, and it jumps up quite a bit. It's almost double. Actually, it's just about double. As our population increases, what are we going to do to find that water? It's kind of scary. Do we have enough water to support all those people? And is that going to be the limiting factor of our city? Let's kind of flesh that out and see what that looks like. So this talks about the supply, what are we going to need to do? So they're saying as the plan kind of unfolded, what did the plan recommend that we do? And these are some of the near-term stuff. Continue water supply development. That's pretty easy one to think. Anybody can come up with that. Don't need a fancy plan to tell you that, right? Recommended strategies, additional conservation. Conservation is the easiest thing. It goes back to that, to our analogy of money in the bank. Not spending money is making money. Not spending water is keeping water. So let's do as much conservation as we can. And That is really the cheapest, easiest way to continue to grow. I think right now we're actually probably using less water than the city has used back in the 80s. They used a ton of water. They had a bunch of pipes with holes in it. We've kind of cleaned that up, fixed it up, doing better now. Additional groundwater wells within Kirk County. So that talks about the Loop 534 well. Also talks a little bit about a remote well field. You know, what are those solutions? What can we look at out there? And then the water rights acquisition and amendments. That's more surface water. Do we want to buy more surface water? Is it reliable enough during these times of drought that we should spend the money to have it available to us? Right now, you go down to the river, this water on paper that we've been talking about, that 6,000 acre feet of water that we have on paper, isn't available to us in the river. It's just simply not there. During those times of better conditions, it is available. So you would build a water treatment plant, and then you would treat that water and you'd store it in an ASR well. And then during the times of drought, you couldn't use your water plant. So there's a big expense there. How often are you going to be able to use that and store it in ASR to really meet your needs? All of that kind of gets weighed out in this plan. So this is a really good plan. I'm kind of rambling on here. I'll get back in gear. I'm sorry. So here's the projections that we talked about already as to residential is going to grow at about 1%, commercial is 1.5, irrigation and municipal. Those are the numbers they used. Here's it in the graphical form as it grows. So the 2020 was about 4,700 acre feet, and as we go out to 2050, it jumps up to almost 7,000 acre feet. This is the particular one that most people are interested in. How do we meet the demand? What are those scenarios? This particular plan picked out almost 18 different solutions that we could look at. And they discarded a bunch of them because some of them were really far-fetched and they just didn't dollar out. They boiled it down to about 11. And of those 11, they said, okay, these deem a little bit more investigation. Let's look into them. That graph is what you see here today. They actually went in and kind of did some estimating on how much water that, if we went and got water out of Lake Amistad, what does that look like? How far is the pipeline? What do those costs look like? If we got water from Canyon Lake, what does that look like? If we went to Gillespie County, they looked far and wide. And they came up with this report, and this report tells the city, in order, this is what we think you ought to do and how you ought to progress your water system. First was conservation. Continue to conserve. That's the easiest, cheapest route. Second, drill a well in the city limits. So we did that. We drilled the 534 well. It's been working well. As our discussion from Headwaters last week with Bryant and Bobby and Brian and Bobby, Digger wasn't there that day. They're saying there's an opportunity to get more water, follow these parameters. That's our second option. So we've done that. The third option was a remote well field. As you look at a remote well field and you read Headwaters rules and you try to determine how much groundwater is available to the city and what you got to do to acquire that water, as it stands right now from interim discussions with Gene or quick discussions with Gene, really the groundwater district is going to, their desire is for you to drill a well where your water is. And so if the city went to a landowner and said, hey, we want to buy your water from you, or half of it, not everybody's going to give up all their water, but give up a percentage of it, then we would need to go to their site, drill a well, and pipe that water back to the city. There's not very many ranches around, unless you go out to West Kirk County, that are big enough that really makes sense. Everything closer, there's just not enough volume where that really dollars out. So anyway, I'm kind of getting into the first little pieces of it, so y'all can feel that we have considered these things. We do think about them. We are concerned about it. We want the city to grow. Which one is the best option here? You'll see on the bottom left, I don't know which one the best option is. It's all about dollars. And so there again, how much do we want to spend? What's our pain tolerance? How are we going to get additional water to serve all these citizens in the future? It all boils down to dollars, and then what's available during the drought of record. So one of the ones that I haven't talked about, we talked about ASR expansion. I'll just do the ones on the far left-hand side because those were kind of in order. the reuse water system. Very unpalatable at the time. Still not something that a lot of people want to consider. But it does help us with our golf courses, and it's actually been a benefit to us, at least during this drought, to have that water system. So those are the things. There's some other ones that, that we can talk through there. Brackish groundwater, upstream diversion contract with GBRA, imported groundwater. Lot longer discussion, maybe another night. Unless you want me to go on. I'll talk about water till the cows come home, which they're on their way.
Okay. All right, well, council, if you have no more, excuse me, any more questions or comments at the time, Shelley, who is our first speaker? We'll give you a rest there.
Thank you.
Thank you,
George
Stuart.
Baruti.
George Brody, 1616 Glen Road. That's a tough act to follow, right? Anyway, so I'll be really brief. He talked about it a few times, talked about it at the top, additional conservation. So I would urge us to do that, but more than the toilet, modifying your toilet so it uses less water, all these other things. If we looked at our rate system to more incentivize conservation, I think we're kind of going backwards on that. You've got two different types. You've got base rate, volumetric. One's a user fee, volumetric. The other is more like a tax, the base rate. And what we're doing when we change our base rate, as opposed to relying more heavily on the volumetric, is to push it more towards conservation is less important. If my water is costing more, that's going to drive whether I use less or more than probably any other method that we have. I understand about stabilizing the revenue needed, but there's ways to do that without actually modifying the base rate as much as we do. We could basically go to a completely volumetric and choose ways to do that and still come out with a stabilized rate. I made up a term as he was talking, a safe operating level of revenue. So we can figure out what the heavy rainy season is, and we can spread that out in lots of different ways. We're choosing to do it where it actually is, I would argue, marginally maybe, but it's not towards conservation. It's making it so that my water goes up. The littlest user who's conserving less than what the minimum bill is at his house is not incentivized to do anything more. The one that's the biggest user is not incentivized to use less. So we should probably attack that. The reuse system, we don't charge the true cost of getting that reuse water to the person, and we should, because if you view all of our water sources, as he was doing, as one source of water, then no matter what type of water you're getting, groundwater, ASR water, or reuse water, you should be charging essentially the same to get water to your place. And so we're de-incentivizing conservation by the way we're choosing to charge for our water service. I would ask you to just think about those. Obviously, nobody's going to change anything right now, but please think about the difference between a user fee and a tax when we're talking about water rates and try and incentivize conservation.
Thank you.
Jerry Wolf.
Good evening. I think I could talk longer than Stuart could, Mr. Barron, tonight. But obviously he covered a lot of territory. He spent close to an hour speaking with many view graphs, a lot of data, a lot of statistics, a lot of information. There's a lot in there that hasn't been said. There's some incompleteness, some things that have been overlooked, and these things are serious. It's just not minor stuff. And I say that because I have spent a lot of time studying this, and I'll demonstrate a few things that I know, and I'll present it to you so to hopefully to build my credentials a little bit that I've looked into this pretty deeply. Mr. Barron, you may not be aware, probably not. In 2015, Texas A&M did a study on the volumetric capacity of the Nimitz Lake, and it was measured at, when it's full, at 848 acre feet. They also found out that about 10% of it had been lost due to sediment, dirt coming in. That was in 2015. By the way, they recommended that in 2025 another study be done. So anyway, the capacity of that lake, theoretically, based on 2015 data, is about 770 acre feet. And I don't know if you've been by there this week, but it looks to be like 4 or 5 feet down, at least 4 feet, which is out, when you go look at the capacity table of the lake, that's about half. In other words, half of the water supply is gone. That's available to Kerrville to pump out of there. And it is dependent on, as we know, the lake is dependent on rainfall and springs coming from the forks and the Johnson Creek to fill it up, and that flow rate is down. I haven't tracked that closely, but I know since better than a week ago, it's down to a trickle. And that flow rate and the output from the lake is what the water master with TECQ uses to regulate the water usage from the lake and from the river. I disagree with George about the cost of reuse water as being, should be charging it the same as what the other, as drinking water, potable water, but it should be charged at the cost of production. The water coming out of the plant has been paid for already by customers. And so from there, it should be the cost of the debt of the plant, the principal and interest, plus the pipeline cost, and then operating costs, which is actually pretty minimal. But I can get into that deeper later. But anyway, that's just 2 points I wanted to bring up to you. I would propose that I will go home and get a copy of what was presented tonight and prepare a presentation for you. And we'll go into this into detail, and we'll cover this Ellenberger well. Fact remains, during a drought, you either have the Loop 534 well producing, or you have the Meadowview well producing. You cannot produce both. Mr. Barron presented that in the workshop on March the 21st. So, and I have statistics. I have a chart of production of the Meadowview well and the Loop 534 well from June of 2022 to present day, well, to June of 2023, so a month ago. And I did not see on that chart, I have to look again, I don't believe there's any month where they were both produced. It's either one or the other, and it was typically one well produced for a couple of months, like 3 months, then they would shut in for 3 months. So obviously there was this problem of cone of depression that you had to deal with, which you have to deal with several wells. There's another pair of wells in the city that are that way
Mr.
also.
Wolf, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it, but your time is up.
I know, ma'am, but this is very important to the city of Kerrville.
We understand that. Thank you.
And stage 2's not enough.
Well, it may be a start, so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
That's the end of the citizen speakers.
All right. Anything further, council, at this time?
No, but I think you made it. Yeah, we did. Thank you for all of that information. It was really good. Mayor, I think you made a good suggestion and a good start for us to start looking at something that, I mean, it looks like the top recommendation is looking at some way to conserve. And so I think we need to start looking at that, and I think it would behoove us to do that within these next couple of months if possible, because of because of the situation we're in just now and how that's going to continue, but also because we have staff that's preparing a budget for us, and that it's going to impact. And I think if we're looking at doing something now, give them a heads up so they can provide all that information too.
What do you need?
I don't need anything. I can address some of their concerns in just a few minutes, and maybe that'll help some of that. Martin, if you can pull up the presentation again, talk about a little bit about base rate versus volumetric. As we do that, we're actually going to go into a wet period again. We use the base rate to cover our expenditures. And that's the piece, because as it rains, if it rains tons, nobody uses any water. And if you just do it on volumetric, it's very hard to weigh those out from dry year to wet year. So that's the reason that we go.
He's not here.
Mr. Bruto, sorry, I won't even go with this other one. To answer Mr. Wolf's questions about the pond, the study that was done on the pond, yes, the volumetric study was done on that lake. It did go down like everybody anticipated. However, that does not affect your water rate or your impoundment rate per TCEQ. That impoundment rate is given to you when you get your water right. And they don't update it every so often, at least they haven't to us yet. So we're still 840 acre feet. When he says the lake's down 4 or 5 feet, this is the graph that I wanted to show you. We measure the lake level every day. The normal pooling level is this is a normal pooling level at 1,621 feet above sea level. Right now it's at 1,619.11. So we're not 4 or 5 feet down. That's the normal pooling level. That's not even the top of the dam. So there's usually about 8 to 10 inches of water over the top of the dam. And so we do monitor that, and we're well aware of what's going on. So we do keep up with it. So thank you, and happy to visit with you if you have some more questions and need more clarification.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Kim, if we want to move to stage 2, what do you just need from us? Consensus that we would like to do that?
I think the ordinance provides Mike's out of the room, but I think the ordinance provides the oversight and the decision-making for the city manager based upon information from the Director of Public Works. So.
And Hayes, we'll get Hayes to review it as well. We actually started talking about that today, so he's doing some homework to see what we need to do without hitting the thresholds immediately to go into stage 2. So he's doing that research as we speak. Well, maybe as we speak, maybe not, but today.
Okay, so council, if we were to give him consensus on that, do we have that?
It wouldn't affect the decision-making process because they go based on his recommendation.
Well,
to her.
true.
Right.
And
But if
so
you
the
just-
ordinance exists, it doesn't say council at their whim can just
That's right.
change.
But it gives specific numbers that you have to follow, and that's
It does.
where we would either have to change those so that the number is lower than what it is now, so that we are in stage 2. I see a nod overhead over there. You'd have to change that, I think, is what the direction would be, because the city manager has that authority in the ordinance to do it if it hits that threshold.
Yes, it's a trigger. And so-
Right, but we're not at that threshold yet, so I think we need to look at changing the ordinance, do a review and analysis of the data that you have to figure out what is the best way to go about it if we're gonna hit a stage 2, to adjust that.
A big step in the right direction will be removing that Loop 534 well, because that lowers our safe operating capacity, and that's going to get us very close. It gets us almost to like 74%, which we need to get to 75%.
Yep.
To hit that trigger. And so, in that 1%, man, we just go out and check some more wells and see if any of them are producing less last night than they did the night before. We incorporate that in the safe operating capacity, and then the city, on its own demand, forces us to go into stage 2. So yes, ma'am, we're
But that is your decision. I mean, that does not come from us.
yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay.
By ordinance.
By ordinance.
It's not my decision. It's actually what the customers use.
Right, I was about to say, it's not really your decision.
Well, I think
It's your
that
recommendation.
we're saying
Yes, sir.
the sooner the better,
Understood.
whatever it takes, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart. Lots and lots of good information.
Thank you.
All right, council, we have one last item.
No, we don't.
Two?
We're on the financial.
Oh, we have two. Oh, that's right.
Sorry.
Oh,
We're almost there.
that's right. I
Two.
missed that one. Just seen Julie, was going to tell Julie.
go first, just so you know.
We're one item closer to finish. We're one day closer closer to rain.
So,
We still got BBAA.
Just was gonna speak really quick as a follow-up to one comment that was made earlier, as I'm giving you our proposed rate schedule for fiscal year '24. As far as
Can you
the,
print this bigger next time,
no,
please?
no. I can turn it sideways and I can email it to you too.
No.
She gives me some on this.
I do. I give it to Kim on the 12 by 15s. Yeah. So just a couple follow-up comments real quick. I think Stuart kind of answered some of it, but you'll see in the proposed rate schedule that you have in front of you for fiscal year '24 that we do heavily focus on water conservation when we're setting rates. And so anyone who is staying in that low tier, we're not even proposing an increase to those volumetric raises. All the volumetric increases we're proposing are to the above household average users. So just wanted to follow up on that. We have not found a way in years of studying water consumption of how we can stabilize water revenues that it takes to operate the system on the volumetric side. Base rate is industry standard, and as we've shown y'all a couple of times, we are well below what our comparison cities are as far as what we're charging for base rate. So we really do feel like we're protecting the low users, and that's one of our biggest focuses. And when we show you the comparison graph to what your bill is going to look like, our biggest thing that we start looking at when we look at that is how is this going to impact those low users. And so that's one of the biggest things we look at. So I just wanted to clarify that as a point of someone who does work through those rates and have to work through that. We do take that as a first priority for water conservation and protection of those citizens that aren't using a lot of water. So just wanted that to be said.
The bottom line is we still are increasing our base rate.
Sure, we are increasing our base rate. We absolutely are. And as we're increasing our operating costs, as we're
Right.
increasing, cost of supplies, and everybody who goes to the grocery store is paying more. And so
But the
that's
point
being
is,
passed on.
there's more of a penalty. You're paying a higher rate when you use more.
You are paying a much higher rate when you start getting into what we're gonna call an irrigation stage of
Right.
water rather than a household. And like we talked about, and I don't know Trina or who said it, but you're gonna shower the same, you're gonna wash the same clothes, you're gonna do the same activities. Where you can control it is your irrigation. And so, we work with customers all the time to figure out what is your average use? How can I get it lower? What can we do? And we take those calls in our office all the time and help customers work through that. So definitely one of our biggest priorities is how it's gonna impact the customer. So I really feel like we're doing that, and continue to do that with the data that we have, so. Okay, I'll get off that soapbox for a minute. I'm gonna give you a quick financial report. I know you guys are ready to go home. I am posting these online on the finance site, on our tab on the website. So when we, sometimes because of the nature of when expenses fall, I can't get them out by the time the packets go out. However, we are following up and putting them online. So if anybody wants to see them off the agenda packet, you're welcome to do that. General fund, this is as of June 30th. Property tax, we're 99% collected, so, we fully expect to make budget on property tax. Sales tax, we're slightly behind where we expected to be at this time last year, but remember our budget estimate, it's based on averages, and so that can fluctuate a little bit, and especially when we have a month that's down and then we have a month that's up. So, I'm not really making too big of a deal about that. 42,000 can easily come the other way. Service revenue continues to be better than budget, and I have a graph on that coming up to show you. Recreation, good news, it's really lining up with where we thought we would be this time of the year. If you remember, we started off the year slow on recreation across the board, but that's leveling out, so it looks like they're going to be okay on budget there. About 959,000 better than budgeted expenses. It's really too early to predict what is going to happen there. A lot of that is in maintenance, and that can change really quickly, just depending on timing of paving and when we actually pay things out of a month and those kind of things. So. And then the other line item there does include contingency. So as we have to use that through the year, which we really haven't touched it at this point, we transfer it over. So that's why you see the variation there from original budget to current that you'll see in the budget book. Looking at sales tax, so same kind of graphs. Really, the story here is June had a decrease, which we talked about last month, of 6.4%. July turned around and had a 10% increase. So you can see why we use that rolling average to really track a trend, because we may have some folks that don't make the deadline to pay their sales tax on time, so we have a shortage, and then they come in the next month and they pay it, so we have these oddball payments, and so it's really hard to use a direct month-over-month comparison. So what we're really looking at is how are we trending overall compared to the same period of time last year. Right now, we're at 6% over fiscal year '22, and oddly enough, that's exactly what we budgeted, was 6% over where we thought the year was gonna end, so that's give or take a little bit there. But as we talked about, it's really not a bad story, because when you look at the prior years, I mean, we're 41% over where we were in 2019. So in a 4-year period of time, you know, a lot of that has to do with the economy, right? I mean, prices have gone up on things like that, but big influx of cash that we know during COVID and those things. But the bottom line is the growth is showing that, you know, we're back to kind of what a normal increase would have been. So I'm not too terribly concerned about it. We just have to be conservative when we're budgeting going forward. This is the service revenue slide I was telling you about. So almost 568,000 better than budget. Most of that is in EMS. Remember that we don't directly bill for solid waste, but that's a pass-through cost. So that solid waste there does not include garbage service. That goes directly back to our public services. So just like to show you that, because this is one of our big outliers right now. Small information here on interest revenue. So I'm sure everyone notices they're experiencing higher than normal revenues on interest across the board if you're doing any kind of investing. We don't rely heavily on interest revenue, but it's just interesting to see what happens over time as far as what's happening right now, and we're really trying to take advantage of investing some funds in, you know, things that are higher than 5%, particularly when we're talking about, and we have some cash that we wouldn't usually have with bonds and those kind of things that are waiting to be spent. So we're trying to take advantage of that where we can. Right now we're at an average gain of about 5%. This time last year was 1.08. So just to give you an idea of how quickly the market can change when you're talking about investing. And then just gave you a little graph there on what our diversification is, how we're invested, and just, you know, kind of our method. There's a lot more, whole presentation we could talk about investments, but it's not something we usually bring for this report, so I just thought I'd bring a little bit of information there. Water fund, we're tracking right in line with our model, right in line where we thought we should be at this time of the year, which just tells me that, you know, we're using the data correctly. I'm hoping that continues. You know, of course, a water conservation stage could change that, so we just watch it on a regular basis. Every billing cycle, we're monitoring and seeing how it compared to prior month, prior year, to see, you know, what's happening and where the biggest users are. Interest revenue, of course, is driving the interest and miscellaneous category, and then overall right now our expenses are slightly better than budget, but again, way too soon to be trying to make any assumptions about year end. Just want to give you a little bit of an update on where we've spent money in asset replacement funds so far. I didn't bring in what we still expect to spend, because with supplies the way they are, we just don't know. But these are just some pictures of things that we bought. So the paver, our street roller there, the ambulance that we just received one actually, and we're being told now that it's going to be a while before we get another one. Just some things there, and we took some pictures. The picture on the right, and we call them the noodles. They're some sort of filter at the water plant. I'm sure if Stuart was here, he could tell you what they are better, but basically it's a TTHM filter and it's part of our filtration system. So that's one of the two that we have ordered. So that was the picture of them installing it. Development services overall, much better than last year's. We continue to talk about some new development and things that are going on. Some projects coming up that are kicking off now, the Peterson Surgery Center, the Reserve at Holdsworth, the Wellness Center, the phase 2 of the landing, and then Lennar has issued 18 permits to date, and I think we talked about that last week. So we have those meters set and a lot of things going up over there, so some good progress going on in the housing realm. Little different view of hot tax this month, because I kind of wanted you to see the percent change. As we've talked about hot trending down, it's been 7 months now that we're behind last year. Keep in mind we had 2 really strong years there because of COVID, and, you know, obviously with the river not as good as it usually is, maybe that's a driver, the economy as well, and people are traveling less. However, inflation keeps going down, so, you know, that we could see that turn around quickly. So we monitor this on a regular basis, but what I was trying to show here was where we were last year, where we are this year, and then a percent change throughout those months, so you can kind of see the variation in revenue as the trend line's changing a little bit there. So your calendar that you're used to seeing, I'm happy to report we did get certified roll today, so that's good news. So we'll start working on that tomorrow, working through property tax, seeing how we can finish out the general fund, get it balanced, and then get our budget presentation put together for you guys. Bob, of course, is working on the effective tax rate, so he'll get those numbers to us. He has until the 28th, but he's usually really spot on, so I would expect that he'll turn that around pretty quickly and work with us to get some sort of tax rate recommendations. We'll present all of that to you on the 8th. And then that will also come with a resolution to set the tax rate, followed by public hearings after that. And then we'll also be starting audit pre-work in August, so no rest. September, we'll have the second reading, and then we'll start our fiscal year on October 1st. So that is the quick update, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, or specifics you'd like to know, or anything you'd like me to bring you in the future.
Anybody?
Is this fee schedule part of your?
It is, and so I wanted to
Is there
bring that
something I
to
can
you
ask
ahead
you?
of time, and that way, if you had any questions before we actually put it in the book, I meant to bring it on the 18th, but we were still trying to work on some formatting and stuff, so I wanted to give that to you ahead of time. That will be part of the proposed budget. Those came in from departments, and so, because it's so big and there's so much, there's some that have absolutely no changes, so you'll see the yellow, and red, font has, changes, so those are the ones you'll have to look at, and anything else you have questions on, we can answer those ahead of time.
Okay. Would this be a time to ask you a question now on this, or
No.
should I email you?
Yeah, send me an
Okay.
email.
Okay.
I don't know that I'll be able to answer it right now. I mean, if it's something simple, I probably can, but if it's something too detailed, I'll have to go back and look if
It's
there's a
ju-
change.
Well, I'll just tell you now, I
Yep.
don't need an answer, and I'll follow up with an email
Okay.
too. But I was looking for our library. I noticed there.
It's in there.
No, I know it is.
Oh, okay.
No, but I noticed in the rentals section, and this changed, I think in 21, whenever I was just got on council. We no longer have the ability for people to rent out the downstairs meeting room. And if that's a simple answer, then great. But if it's not, I'd just like some information on why, because I think
Sure.
it's additional revenue stream.
The
There,
simple answer is that staff uses it most of the time for
Okay.
other events or library events
Yeah.
also.
We occupy it quite a bit.
We have a lot of trainings that we do over there. The fire department uses it, the police department uses it,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
city administration uses it, and then they use it for reading and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
and summer is even harder because of all the youth programming and stuff like that. So, yeah, I would say that honestly, even from a staff perspective, it's hard for us to book it because it stays booked up. So that was the main reason.
Okay. I just know there were like probably half a dozen this year,
Yeah.
groups that wanted to do something there.
Mhm.
And I forgot that it hadn't been done, but I told them
Yeah,
in the past we had, go check, and then they came back and said, no, we can't.
yeah.
And I realized that, but
That's the largest space that we have as far as staff gathering, and we do a lot of training and a lot of meetings in there. So it's in use quite often.
all right.
But yes, any questions you have on that, just email them to me. If I don't know the answer, I'll reach out to that department director and find out the answer. So
Okay.
just wanted to give you that ahead of time.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you,
Thanks,
you,
Julie.
appreciate it. All right, we have arrived now at 8A. I think there's one hiding that I missed, is there? Okay, Shelley, read us in.
Appointment and removal of a member to the Building Board of Adjustment and Appeals. This item is eligible for executive session 551.074.
All right, our interview team was Councilman Harris and Councilman Garcia. Do we need to go into executive session?
We don't think so. I do believe we have understanding from the information given to us from staff that I'll speak on the removal first, that Mr. Asmus is the individual that we are considering to be removed. It's my understanding after talking with staff and in the information that they provided, they've had meetings and he's not attended one. He's an alternate, and so because he falls below like the 25, you miss 25% of the meetings or 3 consecutive meetings, he's definitely fallen below both of those. So I think that's the recommendation to remove him. And then second, we've both been able to talk with Mr. Eaker now, and we would recommend approval of him. So unless there's anything else, if y'all need to go in executive session for anything, we're good making that motion. And if there's anything else you want to add, Councilman?
Thank you for saying his name right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people call him Euchre, but it's actually pronounced Eaker.
Mr. Eaker. Yeah, I worked with him before, so yeah, I know that.
Okay, you guys ready? All right, you give us a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, I move to appoint Mr. Wayne Eaker as an alternate member on the Building Board of Adjustment and Appeals, and further move to remove Mike Asmus as an alternate member.
All right, do we have a second?
I will
We
second.
have a second, and everyone in favor, please raise your right hand, and it is unanimous.
Do we also need to,
Pardon?
we also need to set the staggered terms for the other 5 existing members, staff has submitted a recommendation on the terms. I guess I could have done this in one motion, but maybe it's safer to do it separate. The last page in the packet on this item has the recommendation. I'll just say as a member of the interview team, I'm fine with that. I have no problem.
I think that's understood that that will be done. Do we need a motion on that?
It could be as simple as adopting the page that's in the packet.
Okay, so
I will make the motion to adopt the page that is in the packet to stagger the terms of the BBAA members.
I'll second that.
all right, all in favor, raise your right hand, and it is unanimous. Very good. All right, you got that, Shelley?
Yes,
We're good?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right, super. All right, as we end the evening, and we did not do what Mayor Pro Tem did a couple weeks ago, no hour meeting, sorry about that. But thank you guys for a good meeting that time. And is there anything that someone needs to put on an agenda for the future? Going once, going twice, and at 9 o'clock on the dot, we will close the city council meeting. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it.
Good job.